Chapter 62. On this day, Hien was surrounded by the new recruits who came to befriend her until midnight. She had promised many people to teach them her swordsmanship, but she was only able to do so in the middle of the night. Because it was too late, she did not plan to go to the martial arts field to train at night. Xiao Mai lay facing her with one hand behind her head. Her eyes were bright as she said to her, "Ehigo is so impressive today." "Tell me," Hien muttered to herself for a while, then said, "When I was sparring with Uncle Huang today, did Military Governor Xiao finish watching?" She was still thinking about Xiaoju during the day. How could Xiaoju leave without watching her exquisite swordsmanship? Wouldn't that be a waste of her efforts? Perhaps Xiaoju thought that her swordsmanship was so ordinary that it was not worth her attention? Xiaomai did not expect Hien to ask about this. She tried hard to recall, then said, "The governor came for a while, then left. But you were too nervous at the end of the sparring session. We were all watching you, so we didn't see when he left. He should have finished watching, right?" Hien turned over worriedly. "Ehiga, do you really want the governor to see it?" Xiaomai asked. "Of course I want to learn martial arts and sell it to the imperial family. I have to sell it first. He didn't even watch it. How would he know that I'm the best in the Liang province guards?" Hong Shan's slow voice came from the other side. "Now that your reputation as the best in the Liang province guards has spread far and wide, don't worry. In a few days, there will be people looking for you to compete in this and that. There will be countless opportunities like this. Military Governor Xiao will see it one day." "That's good," Hien thought to himself, then closed his eyes. Hong Shan was right. Early the next morning, right after the weight-bearing run, before he could go to the martial arts field to practice his crossbow, Liang Ping walked in front of Hien. "Come here." Hien didn't know what was going on, so he followed them. When he reached the long path behind the training field, he saw two people leading 3 horses towards them. Hien also remembered their faces. They were both instructors of the Liangzhou Guards Institution. One of them was called Du Mao, and he often came to talk to Liang Ping. The other was a short old man with grizzled hair. His name was Ma Damei. "Liang Jiao, this is..." Hien did not understand. Could it be that he wanted her to be a coach because she was very outstanding? How could a recruit be an instructor? This wasn't the way to get promoted. Besides, she didn't want to be an instructor in the Liang Province Guard. Fortunately, Liang Ping's words put her at ease. Liang Ping said, "Didn't you say on the martial arts platform a few days ago that you could accept any challenge from the Liang Province Guard, and that you would win every single one of them?" Although Hien did not understand what he meant, he still nodded and replied, "That's right. Then today the 3 of us will compete with you in horseback archery." Du Mao stepped forward and handed the reins to Hien. "Let's compete now." Hien was slightly surprised. "You want to compete with me?" She had set up this arena to make a name for herself among the recruits. She had never thought about becoming an instructor. What's wrong with these instructors? They're not young men. Why are they so hot-headed that they want to compete with me? Are they plotting something? Her wary gaze fell into their eyes. That thin old man with grizzled hair, Ma Damei, smiled and said, "What's wrong? Young man, are you afraid to compete with us instructors? I thought you had guts. You're scared just because of this?" Ma Damei's face was full of wrinkles when he smiled, but it was not ugly. Instead, it was as amiable as a family elder. However, Hien knew that this person was not as amiable as he appeared to be. From what he heard, every word and sentence was meant to provoke her. However, since she had already said so much, if she really didn't go, she would be known as a coward. Xiao Ju was someone who couldn't tolerate sand in his eyes, so he probably wouldn't let her go to the 9 Flags Battalion. Thinking of this, she laughed heartily. "How could that be? I'm just afraid that I'll embarrass myself in front of you instructors, so I'm a bit hesitant. Since you instructors are willing to teach me, how could I not appreciate your kindness? Let's compete. One match it is." Liang Ping and the other 2 looked at each other and nodded. Okay. Hien was now a famous person in the Liang Province Guards. Whenever there was a disturbance, everyone would know about it. Once the news that the 3 instructors wanted to compete with Hien in riding and archery came out, all of the recruits immediately went crazy. They wanted to go and watch, but were stopped by their instructors and only allowed to train in the martial arts field. Naturally, this was Shen Han's arrangement. Although Xiao Ju only said that they wanted to test He Yan, they could not use the reputation of all of the Liang province guards as a test. It was better to be safe than sorry. If He Yan won, then in the future, would the recruits obey He Yan or their instructors? It was hard to say. Therefore, it was better to hide. The recruits could not go and watch this show. Cheng Li Su, who was not a recruit, could not either. He was locked in a room in the Liang province guards. There were also guards outside, so he could not go out. He did not know that He Yan was going to compete in riding and archery. When he was suddenly locked up, he thought that something had happened to the Liang province guards. He pounded on the door and said, "What happened? Is there a riot? Why can't you let me go out? Uncle, why are you locking me up?" The emotionless voice of the guard came from outside. "Young master, the governor said that you have to finish copying the Zhao Mingwen anthology 3 times before you can go out. I think you want me to die. Why don't you just kill me?" Cheng Li Su sat down in front of the table angrily. 3 times? He would not be able to finish copying in a month. Outside, Shen Han and Xiao Ju were walking out. Shen Han looked behind him and said, "Young Master Cheng seems to like He Yan a lot. If He Yan really has a problem, is it possible that he has other motives for approaching young Master Cheng?" "It's very possible," Xiao Ju said. Cheng Li Su was the one who told him about the 9 Flags Battalion. Shen Han was silent for a moment before saying, "If that's the case, then it's really bad." There were actually people with ulterior motives among the recruits of the Liang province guards. He Yan was one of them, but he was definitely not the only one. If there were other people, they would be in a very passive position. What was even more frightening was that they did not know anything about this. If Xiao Ju did not happen to be here this time, and saw that He Yan's movements were different, the entire Liang province guards would have become someone else's property. As the 2 of them spoke, they had already reached the side of the horse path in the martial arts field. He Yan and the other 3 people were standing at the end of the path, each holding a horse. First it was Liang Ping, then Du Mao, then Ma Damei, and finally He Yan. They all mounted their horses. He Yan stood at the furthest side, and her horse was also the smallest. Probably to take care of her figure, she flipped onto the horse. Her movements were skillful. She held the reins in one hand and carried a quiver and longbow on her back. Her majestic appearance did not seem like the weak young man that they usually saw. He Yan did not even have a riding suit. The sunlight shone on his red clothes, gilding his delicate features with a layer of special heroic spirit. He Yan had a smile on his lips. His appearance of a golden saber and armored horse actually resembled the stunning charm of a young general. Shen Han stole a glance at Xiao Ju beside him. The latter's expression was lazy and indifferent. He did not know what she was thinking, but Shen Han knew that for a moment, He Yan was actually a little similar to him. Chapter 63. Liang Jiao, you still haven't told me. How do we compete in horseback archery? He Yan looked at Liang Ping, who was beside him. Do we compete in who has more game, or who can reach the end of the track first? Before Liang Ping could speak, Ma Damei spoke first. He smiled and said, "Young man, in the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, we will run a lap around here. This is the starting point and also the end. There is a grass target at the bend of the track ahead. The 4 of us have different feather arrows, so we will shoot at the bend. Whoever finishes shooting and returns to this point first will win." He Yan listened and nodded. "Okay." Liang Ping couldn't help but look at him. The sentence this young man said the most was, "okay." Whether it was to Wang Ba, Jiang Jiao, or Huang Xiong, or now to these instructors, he still said, "okay." They didn't know when he would say no. "Then let's start." Du Mao pulled the reins. Someone behind him blew a horn. The 4 horses were like arrows leaving the bowstring. In the blink of an eye, they were more than 10 meters away, leaving only billowing smoke behind. He Yan's horse was much more obedient than the one she had at the capital's drill ground. He Sui must have been specially trained by someone. She only needed to give a few instructions, and the horse would understand. She also noticed that among the other 3 instructors, Although Liang Ping and Du Mao's equestrian skills were good, they were not as good as the ordinary-looking Ma Damii. Ma Damii's equestrian skills were on par with hers. Perhaps she was better, but she didn't show it. She observed the three instructors, and the others were also observing her. Du Mao glanced over, and his eyes almost popped out. Yan didn't use a horsewhip? She wrapped the horsewhip around her arm, and commanded the horse to gallop. However, she used her hand to gently pat the horse's body. This wasn't the capital's young master going on a scenic tour. What was he doing? The most surprising thing was that he was so casual that he didn't fall behind the instructors. He was running neck and neck with Du Mao. He even had the mood to smile at Du Mao. Du Mao immediately turned his head away. The steed galloped like a shooting star, and arrived at the bend in the blink of an eye. Yan reached for the quiver on his back, took out several arrows, and was about to shoot at the grass targets on both sides. This target was not as big as the one at the training field. It was only the size of a palm, and was not obvious. If one used a crossbow, it would not be easy to hit it. It also depended on the person's eyesight and movements. Just as Yan was about to shoot, Liang Ping and Du Mao looked at each other. One in front, the other behind, they suddenly exerted their strength. The two horses squeezed toward Yan's side, pushing Yan's horse to one side, so that the arrow in his hand could not be shot. Yan was jolted a few times by the frightened horse, and hastily pulled on the reins to steady himself. She looked at Liang Ping and Du Mao. The two of them were shooting arrows as if nothing had happened. Du Mao even said to her, "Yan, you have to be careful. Don't fall." It was as if they weren't the ones who had just touched her. Yan raised his eyebrows. Really, on the competition field, she never understood the word forgive. They disturbed her archery. How could she just let it go like that? Liang Ping and Du Mao had already shot their arrows, but they saw a green arrow shoot out from the side. With a dong sound, the arrow was cut in half. The arrow changed direction and fell to the ground. The two of them looked at Yan at the same time. Yan shrugged and said, "Instructor, why do you look like you're not very skilled?" Liang Ping. This young man was too vengeful. His mouth was also unforgiving. He was really arrogant. Yan was about to shoot again, but before she could pull out the arrow, her body jolted again. The old man, Ma Damii, had already caught up from behind. He smiled at Yan and said, "Young man, don't be anxious. Take your time." Yan couldn't draw the bow. As soon as she moved, the three of them would follow from behind, from the front, from the left and right, and touch her as if nothing had happened. The horses were frequently frightened, so she couldn't aim at the bull's eye. After a few times, Yan could see that the three instructors were deliberately opposing her. Although she didn't understand why, it was probably part of the competition. If they wanted her to be unable to shoot, even if she returned to the end of the track first, it wouldn't be considered a victory. She was outnumbered. Moreover, this was a competition of archery. She couldn't fight with these instructors. However, Yan couldn't just let it go like this. Yan's eyes moved slightly. She muttered, "Want to scheme against me? No way." She suddenly raised her arm. The horsewhip wrapped around her arm uncoiled and fell in the wind, making a crisp sound. "Yes." Du Mao frowned. From the beginning to the end, Yan hadn't used the horsewhip. It was rare to see someone who could skillfully ride a horse without a horsewhip. But now that Yan was doing this, could it be that she couldn't handle it and had to use the horsewhip again? Yan was thinking when suddenly, she raised her head and smiled at him. Du Mao had a bad premonition. The next moment he saw the horsewhip flying towards him. Du Mao was shocked and instinctively dodged. Yan actually dared to hurt people. When he moved sideways, the quiver behind him was exposed in front of everyone. The horsewhip didn't fall on Du Mao's body. Instead, it wrapped around the arrows in the quiver. Yan stretched out her hand and pulled. The horsewhip loosened in midair, and the arrows fell into the wind. Liang Ping, who witnessed the whole process, was stunned. Before he could react, Yan's horsewhip was aimed at him. He was shocked and hurriedly urged his horse to dodge. But this time it was Yan's turn to attack. How could he escape? With a pull and a hook, all the arrows in his quiver were thrown to the ground. Yan. Du Mao's face was livid. "I think the instructors don't want me to shoot." Yin didn't seem to see his ugly face. She smiled and said, "But I don't want to lose. There's no other way. Let's stop shooting. Whoever runs faster wins, right?" Ha 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 ha. Ma Damiai's laughter came from behind. He didn't have a trace of nervousness or anger. Instead, he was full of interest. "You're quite smart. I wonder if you'll take my arrows?" Yin smiled. "How can I? I don't intend to take your arrows." Ma Damiai's equestrian skills were excellent. It was difficult for her to touch his arrows. But it didn't matter. As long as there was no target to shoot at, he could only compete with her to reach the finish line first. She and Ma Damiai went side by side. When she shot an arrow, Ma Damiai shot an arrow to block. When Ma Damiai shot an arrow, Yin shot an arrow to block. The two of them had left Liangping and Du Mao behind. No one was faster than the other. Thus, in a stalemate, they passed the last bend. No one hit the target. Now they could only compete to reach the finish line first. Ma Damiai looked at Yin and smiled. "Young man, you're really good." He waved his horsewhip. Suddenly, the horse rushed forward. Just now he didn't use all his skills. Yin looked at his back and praised, "There's really someone better than you." He squeezed the horse's belly and followed. Chapter 64. The horse was agile, its hooves stirred up the wind, and as fast as lightning, it galloped straight to the finish line. Yin and Ma Damiai were neck and neck. If this continued, it would be hard to tell who would reach the finish line first. Liangping and Du Mao had already given up. They knew that their equestrian skills were not as good as the two in front of them, and they could not catch up. They simply strolled slowly behind them. Anyway, they had already done what Chief Instructor Shen asked them to do. Chief Instructor Shen called them out last night and asked them to compete with Yin in equestrian archery today. At first, Liangping and Du Mao both refused. They were not recruits, so why should they compete with Yin? But Chief Instructor insisted that they do this. He also asked them to create trouble for Yin as much as possible during the equestrian archery journey, and not let Yin win. Liangping felt very uncomfortable. They wanted to compete with Yin, but they could not let Yin win. Wasn't this deliberately unfair? Comparing their instructor and the recruits was already bullying, and the three of them teamed up to deal with Yin. It was simply the worst kind of bullying. Who knew that man proposes, God disposes? Not to mention the three of them, he and Du Mao did not bully Yin. Instead, they were bullied by Yin. Fortunately, the recruits did not see it. If they saw it, where would they put their old faces? But among the three of them, Ma Damiai was an expert in equestrian skills. How would Yin compare with her? From afar, they could see the red silk cloth on the flagpole at the finish line. Yin pulled the reins, and the horse moved forward, half a step ahead of Ma Damiai. She wanted to rush to the finish line, but at this time, Ma Damiai shouted, "Little guy." Yin subconsciously looked at him. She saw the little old man standing upright with his 2 feet on the horse's back. He was very stable. She praised him in her heart. Then the old man smiled at her, turned his body, and swept toward Yin. Yin was startled. He urged his horse to evade, but the old man was like a bat with wings. Half of his body was already hanging on Yin's horse. He even pursed his lips and reprimanded Yin for urging the horse to avoid him. "Young man, how can you be so unkind at such a young age? Do you want me to fall to my death?" Yin wanted to push Yin down, but this man had already taken over the magpie's nest, holding the reins firmly in his hand. He struck his palm toward Yin, intending to knock him down. This person was really full of confidence in her. Wasn't he afraid that something would happen to her if she fell? Yin cursed in his heart. He exchanged 2 more moves with him, but neither of them was able to gain an advantage. Ma Damiai was also surprised. The dozens of instructors of the Liang State Guard all had their own strengths. Some of them were proficient in bows and crossbows, while others were proficient in foot encirclement. However, he was most proficient in horseback archery. Yesterday, Shen Han had asked him to compete with Yin today. At first he thought Shen Han was crazy, but now, it seemed that this young man named Yin had greatly exceeded his expectations. His riding skills were exquisite, and his mind was nimble and decisive. He knew that it would be difficult for the three of them to hit the grass target, so he simply knocked away all of the other people's arrows. At this moment, the two moves he exchanged with him were not chaotic at all. It was as if he often exchanged blows with others in critical situations. He was very calm. He Yen, on the other hand, was not as calm as he appeared. The instructors of the Liang State Guard weren't people who only knew how to eat and not do anything. This old man was truly difficult to deal with. Seeing that the finish line was too close, her goal was not to exchange blows with him, but to cross the finish line first. If this continued, even if the horse reached the finish line, with both her and the old man on the horse, who would win? How treacherous! When she raised her head, her face was also full of smiles, without a trace of displeasure. Although I am young, I know how to respect my elders. You are already so old, yet you are still riding with me. If you fall, even 10,000 deaths would not be enough to absolve me of the blame. I'd better switch horses. As she spoke, she leaned forward and grabbed the iron ring on the horse's saddle with both hands. She leaned against the horse and let go. This move was truly beautiful. Ma Damiai's eyes couldn't help but light up. He Yin grabbed the iron ring with one hand, and used the whip in his other hand to wrap around Ma Damiai's empty horse not far away. When the two horses drew closer, He Yin let go and half of his body jumped onto the other horse. He grabbed the reins and flipped himself onto the horse again. Good, good, good. Ma Damiai said good 3 times in a row. She looked at He Yin with undisguised admiration. However, he smiled and said, "But if you think you can win like this, you're still too inexperienced." Before she finished speaking, the horse under He Yan's body violently struggled and refused to move forward. Instead, it stood on the spot as if it had gone mad. "This is my own horse. It recognizes its master. Young man, your horsemanship is not bad. But if the horse recognizes its master, you won't be able to control it." He laughed loudly, as if He Yan's move was exactly what he wanted. He was just waiting to see He Yan make a scene. The young man smiled slightly. His voice was not nervous at all. He calmly replied, "I'll still try. What if I can control it again?" After she finished speaking, she leaned over and put her lips close to the horse's ear. She didn't know what she was whispering, but the horse under her gradually calmed down after she tossed and turned. Ma Damiai was stunned. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had seen thousands of horses. He also had simple communication with horses. However, he had never seen a horse that recognized its master obediently listen to just a few words. There were myths and legends in ancient times. There were people who understood the language of hundreds of animals. Was he one? He had lived for so long, but he had never believed in myths and legends. The young man pulled on the reins and the horse galloped away. Ma Damiai hurriedly followed. However, he had already missed the best opportunity while he was in a daze. The young man's words were still ringing in his ears. He had a smug expression on his face. "Instructor, your chance to beat me ends here." At the end of the horse path, Shen Han and Xiao Ju sat in a pavilion in the forest. Shen Han didn't touch the tea in his teacup at all. Xiao Ju, on the other hand, drank half a cup. He had a panoramic view of He Yan's fight with Ma Damiai just now. Shen Han closed his eyes. A chill rose in his heart. Xiao Ju was right. It was impossible for such a genius to appear in the Liang Province Guards. She was first in every event and had surpassed all of his instructors. This wasn't a good thing. It was too strange. It was as if it was specially prepared for the Liang Province Guards. The red silk fluttered in the wind. The young man and his horse were like a gust of wind as they swept across the finish line. He reined in the horse and shouted for it to stop. Smoke and dust rose. Behind him was Ma Damiai. She had a serious expression and didn't look relaxed. The two of them stopped one after the other. He Yan got off his horse first. After he got off, Ma Damiai also got off her horse. She walked towards Ma Damiai and stopped in front of her. "I didn't mean to tease you just now. I was forced by the situation. You won't hold it against me, right?" The young man looked anxious. Ma Damiai was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled. "Young man, what are you talking about? It's a competition." A big smile appeared on the young man's face. She wiped the sweat on her forehead and thought for a moment. Then she said, "Then this time, thanks for letting me win. Thanks for letting me win." In other words, she won again. Chapter 65. Liang Ping and Du Mao, who were behind him, finally rushed back. The two of them got off their horses at the finish line and saw He Yan happily drinking water, while Ma Damei stood to the side, deep in thought. It didn't look like Ma Damei had won. The two of them thought at the same time, it can't be right? Even Ma Damei couldn't beat He Yan? Liang Ping walked to Ma Damei's side. Ma Damei didn't wait for him to speak and said, "I lost." She really lost? Liang Ping was surprised. How can that be? How could you lose to him? Ma Damei was the best equestrian archer among their instructors. If Ma Damei couldn't beat He Yan, then didn't that mean that no one in the entire Liangzhou Guard was better than He Yan in equestrian skills? Then why would He Yan come to learn equestrian archery? He could be his own instructor. Did that brat trick you? Du Mao asked in a low voice. Did you fall for his trick? He Yan had just used his whip to deflect all of his arrows. Du Mao was angry just thinking about it. Look, was this really something a new recruit could do? Ma Damei glared at him. I'm not as good as him, okay? She walked to He Yan's side and asked He Yan, "Little girl, I have something to ask you." "Instructor, do you want to ask me what I said to your horse at the end so that it stopped going crazy and listened to me?" He Yan tightened his water bag. "If you want to ask about this, then forget it. It's an ancestral skill. I can't tell anyone." She winked at Ma Damei, then turned to Liang Ping and said, "Liang Jiao, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. I still have to go to the practice field to train." Liang Ping waved his hand. "Forget it, out of sight, out of mind." Du Mao looked at her back and felt that it was strange. She's still quite energetic after this run. She actually still has the strength to go to the practice field to train. What kind of person is she? He's different from you and me, Liang Ping answered grumpily. I've made a fool of myself in front of you. Shen Han was a little embarrassed. All of his instructors had been defeated by He Yan, and this was under the condition that he had used some tricks. If the three of them couldn't defeat him even after joining forces, it would be somewhat inexcusable. It's nothing. You did well. Xiaoju lowered her eyes and sipped her tea. We didn't ask you to compete in equestrian archery. We just wanted to test the candidates. Now the candidates have been tested. Does the commander-in-chief still think that there's something wrong with him? Shen Han asked. Yes. Because He Yan is too outstanding? If it was because of this, it could only be regarded as suspicion. There was no evidence. Xiaoju put down the teacup in her hand. The way he rode the horse at the end is from the barbarian tribe. Barbarian tribe? Shen Han suddenly stood up. The barbarians included the Western Chang, the Southern barbarians, and the current Wuxia kingdom. When the Western Chang rebellion was quelled by General Fei Hong, Xiaoju personally expelled the Southern barbarian tribe when they invaded. Now Yudo was ready to make a move. The barbarian tribe and Dawei had always been like fire and water. Even the Western Chang and Southern barbarian tribe had a subtle relationship. Could she be a barbarian? Not necessarily. Xiaoju shook her head. Did you bring the military registry? Shen Han presented the registry. He Yan's is here. Since this person is different, we can't act rashly and alert him. Pay attention to his every move and be careful. Commander-in-Chief, are you thinking of casting a long line to catch a big fish? We have to catch the person behind it, he replied calmly. After Shen Han left, Xiaoju flipped through the registry in her hand. Her gaze lingered on He Yan's page for a long time. After a while she said, Fei knew someone quietly appeared behind her like a shadow and said in a low voice, Young master. Send someone to check if there is a son called He Yan in the He family of the capital's gate guard. Fei Nu accepted the order, and was about to leave when Xiaoju called him again. Check again. See if the He family and Su Jingfu have any secret dealings. When He Yan returned to the martial arts practice field, a large group of people who had been waiting anxiously surrounded him. How was it? How was it? What was the result? Why don't I see instructor and the others? Did you win or did instructor win? He Yan smiled and said, It's a secret. This answer obviously did not satisfy everyone's curiosity. However, Yan's lips were sealed tightly and no one could pry open his mouth. Everyone left resentfully and speculated among themselves. He should have won, right? Yan doesn't look like he lost. This was someone who believed in her. Since he won, why didn't he say it openly? If he didn't say it, he must have lost and was afraid of losing face. This was someone who did not believe in her. You won't get a result even if you argue. If Yan doesn't want to say it, you can ask the instructor. This was someone who thought it through calmly. Therefore, when the instructors arrived, everyone swarmed towards the instructors like a swarm of bees. The instructors were confused at first, but when they heard that they were being asked about the results of the competition, they all looked towards Yan at the same time. They thought that this kid was kind and knew to leave some face for the instructor, and did not expose him. The instructor waved their hands and said, "Don't ask anymore. Disperse." In the end, they did not say anything. When Yan went to bed that night, Xiaomai was still thinking about the result. She asked Yan, "Ehigu, so what was the result?" "The result is not important." Yan patted Xiaomai's head and said, "The important thing is that I'm going to bed now." She turned over to face the wall and pointed the back of her head at Xiaomai. Xiaomai could not get an answer from her, and could only give up. Yan could not sleep. He kept thinking about what happened on the horse path during the day. No matter what, it was too strange for three instructors to suddenly challenge her to a riding and archery competition. The three of them teamed up to fight her. If she was a normal recruit, she would not be able to handle it. But they did not seem to consider whether she could withstand this kind of competition. It was not like a challenge, but more like a test or to prove something. In the end, she subdued Ma Damiai's horse. She used a horse taming technique that she learned from a barbarian captive when she was in the army. That captive was a horse trainer. His horse taming technique was superb and made them suffer a lot. After Yan captured him, the captive was afraid of death. He wrote down his tribe's precious horse taming technique and gave it to Yan. But that horse taming technique was too complicated. Yan only learned a little. Even so, it was enough to stop a normal horse. If she did not do that today, she would not have won against Ma Damiai. But if it was really a test, the only person who could command the Liang Province Guards Institute's instructor was either the head instructor or Xiaoju. If it was Xiaoju, what was his purpose? Could it be that he wanted to pick someone to go to the Nine Flags Battalion, so he hurriedly ordered the instructor to test her qualifications and skills? Was that so? Yan faintly felt that she might have thought wrongly, but she could not find any other way to think about it. After thinking for a while, she decided not to think about it anymore. Since she was already here, she might as well take things as they came. After all, she did not lose this round. Chapter 66. Yan originally thought that if it was Xiaoju who asked Ma Damiai and the others to compete in equestrian archery with him, then after the competition, they would be able to see that his skills were out of the ordinary and would do something about it. But after more than 10 days had passed, the days were still as usual. Other than the occasional recruits who came to compete with her, nothing else happened. She didn't even get an extra cup of military rations. Maybe it was just a coincidence? Yan thought that maybe the instructors were bored in the Liang Province Guard and wanted to test their skills. She put this matter to the back of her mind for the time being. After a few rains, the summer heat seemed to have lessened a bit. Occasionally, when she woke up in the morning for a jog, there was no sun and a cool breeze. Before long, the summer of the Liang Province Guard would be over. It was also because the weather was gradually cooling that the recruits were allowed to enter the mountain a few days ago. Mount Baiyue was extremely large. It would take at least a day and a night to climb the mountain. Because of this, the recruits were strictly forbidden from climbing the mountain. At most, they could only go to the top. Every day, 5 people would go up the mountain to patrol. Hong Shan didn't understand. What are 5 people patrolling for? If there really is any danger, will 5 people be enough? Yan thought, of course it won't be enough. You weren't supposed to be patrolling in the first place. The new recruits of the Liangzhou Guard had been training here for an entire summer. Before long, it would be time for the battle for the flag. The flag battle was to plant more than 10 flags at the top of the mountain. The recruits with better aptitudes and outstanding results would be divided into teams, and they would go up the mountain to compete. There would be fights between the teams competing. When they finally went down the mountain, the team with the most flags would be the winner. The final winner would become the most promising recruit and would most likely enter the Vanguard Battalion. He-Yan's goal was no longer the Vanguard Battalion, but 9 Flags Battalion. Now he had the recruits walk around the mountain every day to familiarize them with the terrain of Mount Bayue. He wanted them to remember the location so that they wouldn't be unfamiliar with the way during the flag battle. However, the recruits didn't know. As someone who had been in the military, He-Yan knew. The last time she fought for the flag in Mo County was connected to the desert. When the wind blew in the desert, the landmarks disappeared and the sand dunes changed. When they were fighting for the flag, the situation was very dangerous. If it wasn't for a big brother in the team who found a small river, perhaps no one would have been able to walk out of the desert. Battle for the flag not only tested a recruit's individual skills, but also the team's teamwork. It wasn't enough to just focus on one aspect. The test for everyone was very high. Although the so-called battle for the flag was in the future, from a certain perspective, the competition had already begun. Smart people would be able to remember the way while patrolling, but those new recruits who did not have any awareness would just take it as a random walk, and would not take it to heart. It would not be of any help in the future battle for the flag. Who cares? Ahigu, today it's your turn to go up the mountain. Can you take a bow and arrow and hunt a few rabbits? We'll come back secretly and roast them. I haven't tasted meat for half a month. Xiaomai licked her lips. I won't take a crossbow. He-Yan smiled. A crossbow is too heavy. I'll take a knife. Most importantly, a crossbow was not suitable for close combat. If there was a problem, it wouldn't be very useful. Moreover, in a team, there would always be someone who carried a crossbow. When the time came, they could just borrow it. Seeing Xiaomai's regretful expression, she comforted him. It's okay. In a few days we can go up the mountain together. At that time, we can hunt as many rabbits as we want. Xiaomai was skeptical. He-Yan couldn't tell him that during the flag battle, everyone would be on the mountain. The instructor wouldn't be there either. They might even have to spend the night on the mountain. Naturally, he could eat whatever he wanted. She tied the belt on her clothes tightly. Then, she heard Hong Shan say, "Then go down the mountain early. Let's celebrate the festival together tonight." What festival? He-Yan was confused. Xiaomai said, Qixi Festival. He-Yan. He almost forgot that today was the 7th day of the 7th month, Daughter's Day. However, why would a group of men celebrate Qixi Festival? He-Yan found it funny. Shouldn't we celebrate it with the girls we like? Do you guys like any girls? Hong Shan immediately said, Don't look down on others. There are many girls who like your brother Shan. If brother Shan wants to celebrate Qixi Festival, the girls will definitely be happy. I don't. Xiaomai quickly said. But my brother does. My brother likes Sister Xiaolan, who works at Uncle Sun's noodle shop in the east of the city. Shirtu. He-Yan looked at Shirtu. Shirtu's ears were red. Xiaomai asked again, Ahigu, do you have any girls you like? What kind of girls do you like? He-Yan casually made up a story. Good-looking, smart, good fighting skills, and rich. Oh right, gentle, considerate, lively, and interesting. It's best if she has some skills in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. It'd be best if she knows how to cook. After He-Yan left, Xiaomai was still thinking about He-Yan's words. She muttered, Ahigu's requirements for his sweetheart are really high. Don't listen to his nonsense. Hong Shan nodded. He wants to marry a princess. Xiaomai, don't learn from him. Xiaomai nodded seriously. He-Yan went to the weapon rack in the martial arts arena and took a Mandarin duck sword. Ever since she defeated Huang Xiong's golden broadsword with the Mandarin duck sword, there were people practicing with the Mandarin duck sword every day. However, they were not as agile as He-Yan when it came to practicing the Mandarin duck sword. After practicing a few times, they felt that it was not suitable for them and gave up. In the end, He-Yan was the only one who used the Mandarin duck sword in the martial arts arena. Today, when she went up the mountain, the mandarin duck sword was light and easy to use. If she wanted to start a fire and roast 2 fish, the mandarin duck sword would be easy to kill. She took the mandarin duck sword and walked to the end of the horse path. The other 4 people were already ready. Hien did not know these 4 people. They were not Liang Jiaodo's subordinates. When they saw Hien, one of them smiled and pointed to Hien. Go and pick a horse. We're leaving now. Hien nodded. She went to the stable and picked a horse. The 5 of them went up Mount Baiyue. The mountain was covered with dense forests. It was much cooler and more comfortable to walk than at the foot of the mountain. From time to time, there were wild rabbits jumping by. Someone asked, "Why don't we hunt a few rabbits?" Okay. The recruit who greeted Hien immediately agreed. Who brought a crossbow? Everyone looked at each other. Probably because the crossbow was too heavy and they had to stay on the mountain for more than half a day, no one wanted to bring it. So no one brought it. Well, no one brought it. A recruit with slanted eyes shrugged. His tone was not very good, but his eyes were looking at Hien. Then we can only watch. Everyone knew that Hien's archery skills were outstanding. They probably thought that Hien would bring it. Hien looked back indifferently with a calm expression. You asked General Fei Hong to hunt rabbits for you. Did you bring your brain? You're really shameless, she thought. Chapter 67. Rabbits were not to be hunted. Foxes were also not to be hunted. And birds were still not to be hunted. Since they could not hunt anything, they could only obediently patrol the mountain. The mountain paths of Mount Baiyue were rugged, but the scenery was excellent. White mist rose from the mountain stream, and as far as the eye could see, it was surrounded by an emerald color. Spring light and clouds curled around the robes, and the peaks rose up majestically. It was like a fairyland. Slanted Eyes was very smart. He carried a few pieces of yellow paper with him, and when he reached a place, he used charcoal to draw a few steps on the yellow paper. He was memorizing the path. Every once in a while, everyone would make a mark on the tree to prevent them from getting lost, and not knowing how to get back down the mountain. Because no one brought a bow, the journey was very quiet. They set off early in the morning and finally climbed to the top by noon. Everyone tied their horses to the trees and rested for a while beside a small stream. After eating their dry rations and recovering their strength, they could go down the mountain and return to the garrison before sunset. The recruit who greeted Hien was not very physically strong. When he reached the top, he was so tired that he collapsed on the ground. He impatiently took out some dry rations to fill his stomach and muttered, "We've finally reached the top. I can't walk anymore." Hien washed his hands by the stream and sat down under the shirtu beside him. He also took out some dry rations. The dry rations were the dry biscuits given out in the morning. They were dry and hard. The recruit came over and took out a small handful of pine nuts from his pocket. He handed it to Hien and said, "Here." Hien was surprised. "Where did you get these?" "My mother packed them for me before we came to the Liangzhou garrison. She couldn't bear to eat them all in one go, so she saved them." He was reluctant to part with them, but still pretended to be generous. "Try it." Hien picked up one from his palm, peeled it, and threw it into his mouth. "It's very fragrant." Right. The child was somewhat happy. "My name is Shen Hong. I know you. Hien, you were very powerful at the training field. No one could beat you. I was just lucky." Hien smiled. Shen Hong looked into the distance and said regretfully, "It's a pity that I didn't bring my crossbow. I didn't know that you were going with us. If I had known, I would have definitely brought one. Your archery skills are so good, just use the crossbow to shoot a few rabbits and we can eat roasted rabbits." Could it be that he and Mai were biological brothers from different mothers? Hien thought about it and asked casually, "What weapon did you bring?" Shen Hong scratched the back of her head in embarrassment. "Me? I'm not good at archery, so it's useless to bring a crossbow. My swordsmanship is average, and my spear skills are also. I reckon that I won't be of much use, so I took a..." He took out a long staff from behind his back. "And this?" Hien was speechless. He actually brought a staff, and it was not an iron staff but a long staff made from bamboo. Was there such a weapon on the weapon rack in the martial arts practice field? He Yan doubted that Shen Hong's staff was indeed useless. Oh, unless there was a jujube tree here, he could use this long staff to hit the jujubes. As if seeing He Yan's speechlessness, Shen Hong quickly tried to remedy the situation. Anyway, we won't fight. He Yan nodded. You're right. She and Shen Hong sat on one side, while Slanted Eye and the other two sat on the other side a little further away from them. After eating, He Yan leaned against a tree and rested for a while. Shen Hong carefully asked him, That He Yan, can I borrow your knife? What's wrong? Do you see that? Shen Hong pointed to a green patch by the stream. The leaves were long and thin, and it was impossible to tell what kind of grass it was. He said, My family runs a pharmacy. This is called book belt grass. It's shaped like rhombus, but it's not rhombus. It can be eye-catching and soothe the nerves. I want to pick some back. We've been here all day, so it might be useful. But the book belt grass is very tough, so it's not easy to pick. The weapons they're carrying are either long knives or spears. They're not as good as your small knife. She was using her knife as a sickle. Yan. Okay. She took out the mandarin duck knife from her waist and handed it to Shen Hong. Be careful. Shen Hong put down the staff in her hand and happily took the knife. She said to He Yan, Thank you. I'll cut some more. When I'm done, I'll give you another one. He Yan wanted to say that there was no need, but then he thought that perhaps Hong Shan could use it. Hong Shan said that he had been too hot recently and couldn't sleep well. Moreover, it was Shen Hong's kind intention, so he swallowed the words back into his stomach. She leaned against the tree and watched Shen Hong busying herself. As she watched, she suddenly heard movement behind her. She looked again and saw Slanted Eye and the other two people untying the horse ropes on the tree. He Yan was stunned and asked, Are we leaving already? Aren't you going to rest for a while? In total, they had been here for less than an hour. It was still early, so there was more than enough time to go down the mountain. Slanted Eye didn't seem to like He Yan, and was impatient when talking to her. We're not going down the mountain. Let's go to the front first. He Yan looked ahead. They were already at the top of the mountain. If they wanted to go to the front, they would have to climb over the mountain. She frowned. The instructor said that we can't climb over the mountain. It's just 2 more steps. We won't climb over, Slanted Eye said. We didn't ask you to come with us. You just wait here. We'll be back soon. I think, He Yan stood up. It's better to listen to the instructor. There might be some danger. Zheng Xian, are you going or not? The other person had already untied the horse rope and got on the horse. Slanted Eye Zheng Xian looked at He Yan and said, If you're afraid of danger, then don't go. Besides, only you and I know. As long as you don't say anything, who will know? Don't worry for nothing. Go play with that fool cutting grass. We'll go first. After saying that, he didn't care about He Yan and got on the horse himself. Together with the other 2 people, they went into the depths of the forest. He Yan wanted to chase after them, but he couldn't leave Shen Hong alone. While he was thinking, the 3 people had already gone far away. She sighed and sat down under the tree again. Forget it. They didn't find anything wrong on the way up the mountain. There weren't many people in the mountain, and there weren't any big beasts. At most, there were a few badgers and wild cats. When they saw people, they would run away. After a while, Shen Hong came back from the stream. He was carrying a bundle of grass in each hand. The grass was really shaped like a book belt. It was long and soft. When he smelled it, he could smell its fragrance. Shen Hong found the longest straw and tied the 2 big bundles of book belt. He handed one bundle to He Yan. This is it. Go back and dry it in the sun. Find a cloth bag and put it under your pillow. I guarantee you'll have a good sleep. He Yan said, Thank you. No problem. Shen Hong waved her hand. Only then did he realize that the other people had disappeared. He asked curiously, Where are they? They went for a walk. He Yan shrugged. Let's wait here for them to come back. Shen Hong didn't understand. Just as she was about to ask, she suddenly heard a scream from the depths of the forest. It was one of the new recruits who was with them. He Yan was startled. He frowned. In the next moment, he untied the reins and got on the horse. He went straight to the source of the sound. Chapter 68. The source of the sound was not far away. He Yin galloped on his horse, and Shen Hong followed behind him. She shouted as she ran, "Hey, wait for me!" As they went further up the mountain, the forest became denser and more moist due to the shade. Almost no sunlight could pass through. In front of people, it felt like the night, gloomy and cold. He Yin stopped in front of a bush. Zhang Xian and the other two were right in front of him. Their horses were anxiously galloping in place, not daring to take a step forward. Zhang Xian's face was pale, and the other two were on the verge of tears. Around the three of them, for wolves were crouching and growling at them. He Yin and Shen Hong happened to come over, and the wolves looked at He Yin with murderous gazes. How could there be wolves at this time of the year? He Yin felt a little strange. He looked at Zhang Xian and the others. They were all in a sorry state. He Yin also noticed that the saber at Zhang Xian's waist was missing. A pack of wolves would attack a person who was alone, but they would not attack the three of them for no reason. He Yin asked, "What did you do?" Zhang Xian's face was pale and he did not speak. The recruit behind him said with a sobbing tone, We walked to the front and saw a cave. There were howls coming from inside, so we went in to take a look. There was a litter of wolf pups inside." "Did you touch the wolf pups?" He Yin asked sternly. Her harsh words scared the recruit. He quickly replied, No, we just wanted to take them back and raise them. Not long after we left, we saw these wolves." He Yin simply wanted to pry open these people's brains and see what exactly was inside. Seeing a wolf's den meant that a female wolf was nearby. Not only did they not leave quickly, they even took the wolf pups. Did they really think that the adult wolves would not follow the scent? "Where are the wolf pups?" He Yin asked. "We were scared and quickly threw the wolf pups back to them, but what?" He Yan's heart suddenly had a bad premonition. "But one of them fell on a rock and seemed to be dead," the person said. "You." He Yin was furious. This pack of wolves would not leave. "What are you yelling for?" Zhang Xian was angry. "Isn't it just a few wolves? Just kill him. How could a person be forced to death by a few beasts?" He Yin sneered. "Is that so? What about your saber?" Zhang Xian's expression turned even uglier. After he killed the wolf pup, he had drawn his saber to confront the pack of wolves. However, the pack of wolves was cunning. His saber skills were not bad, but in his nervousness, the wolves took advantage of him and nearly injured him. In a moment of desperation, he even dropped his saber. If it wasn't for that, they wouldn't be facing such a desperate situation now. "Cut the crap. Now we can either die together or think of a way." He forced the words out from between his teeth. Just as they were talking, Shen Hong also rushed over on his horse. When he saw this scene, he jumped in fright and his voice immediately trembled. So many wolves. Why are there so many wolves?" The wolves lowered their bodies and bared their fangs. This was a sign that they were about to attack. If they had a match, it would be fine. Wolves were afraid of fire. However, they had come out in broad daylight and had not brought any with them. Just as he thought of this, the four wolves pounced on the three people surrounding them. The three people screamed in panic. One of their horse legs was bitten and almost fell off. Shen Hong was about to cry. Help! What was the use of calling for help now? There was no one else here. He Yin steeled his heart and rushed in on his horse. With her charge, she had broken the encirclement of the wolves. When the wolves saw her, they rushed towards her. He Yin urged, "Where are your spears? Take them out and use them." Oh. The two recruits seemed to have woken up from a dream. Only then did they remember their spears. They took them out and waved them around a few times, but they couldn't hold them steady. He Yan's heart suddenly turned cold. It was impossible to count on these people. He Yan wanted to reach for his saber. Only then did he remember that his saber had been borrowed by Shen Hong. He only had a long stick made of bamboo on him. He shouted, "Shen Hong, throw my saber over." Shen Hong responded. She trembled as she pulled out her saber and threw it over. However, He Yan was probably too nervous. He didn't even have time to prepare his saber. The long saber fell from the air, leaving only a short saber in its scabbard. It was thrown in the air, and Hien put it away. The wolves surrounded them again, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Hien said, "When I tell you to run later, just turn around and run. Don't care about anything else. Run down the mountain until you reach the camp. Let the instructors come up, understand?" Shen Hong asked, "What about you?" "I have a way to shake them off." "Hien, how can we run?" The recruit beside Zheng Xian sobbed. "We are surrounded. They will bite the horse legs. If they bite off the horse legs, we won't be able to escape. It's not like there's no way." After Hien said this, the short saber in his hand suddenly flew out. The yang saber was originally small. His movement was fast. In the blink of an eye, everyone only saw a flash of silver light. Suddenly, there was a miserable howl. The smell of blood immediately flowed out. The largest wolf fell to the ground. Blood kept bubbling out of its throat. The saber had completely sunk into its throat. Only the handle of the saber was left outside. The wolf struggled a few times and stopped breathing. "Run!" Hien shouted. Zheng Xian and the others didn't dare to breathe loudly. They immediately shouted, "Jia!" and used all their strength to rush out of the forest. They thought that the remaining wolves would chase after them. They didn't dare to look back. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. The remaining wolves didn't chase after them. They panicked for a moment. When they looked at Hien again, their gazes were extremely fierce. Hien killed the leader of the wolves. Wolves were pack animals. Among these wolves, the largest one was their leader. They listened to the leader's command. Hien killed them. They were a group of dragons without a leader. They were not as smart as before, but at the same time, as the price of killing the leader, she would face the revenge of these wolves. A wolf bared its white teeth and pounced at her. Its sharp claws and teeth could tear a person's head apart. Hien swept his staff horizontally in front of him, causing the wolf to roll forward, pouncing on empty air. It was a very soft sound. Hien's ears were amazing. Once she heard it, her heart sank. The bamboo stick had cracks. It might not be able to withstand a few blows before it broke. How unlucky! She cursed in a low voice. It was just 3 wolves. She could deal with them alone. But now, she had no other weapons on her except for the stick that was about to break. This was really a case of a hero stumped by a penny. No, it was a case of blessings don't come in pairs and misfortunes don't come singly. A person couldn't be forced to death by animals. She thought of Zheng Xian's words and laughed softly. On the battlefield, other than taking the initiative to attack, she was also good at running away. "Run!" The girl's voice resounded through the forest, startling countless birds. The long stick seemed to have infinite strength. It directly struck forward, forcibly opening a path. She rode the horse with the long stick in her hand. It seemed that she was going to disappear into the vast forest. Behind her, the pack of wolves chased after her. It was a close call. Chapter 69. The wind blew past their ears. After running for a long time, the horse stopped. Shen Hong hugged the horse's stomach. They ran as fast as they could. The mountain road was bumpy, so they didn't dare to stop. Only now did they feel nauseous. They were already halfway up the mountain. When they looked back, they didn't see any wolves chasing after them. A recruit said, "We were saved." Shen Hong looked at his waist in a daze. When he came, he grabbed a bamboo stick. Now that the bamboo stick was given to Hien, he thought of Hien. His face turned pale and he asked in a trembling voice, "Where is Hien?" There was only one bamboo stick. Shen Hong had lost one of his mandarin duck knives. The other one was stuck in the wolf's throat. Hien didn't have any weapons. The 3 wolves were charging at him menacingly. How could he escape alone? Should we go back and take a look? He gathered his courage and asked, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Zheng Xian looked at him coldly. "Those wolves are still there. It wasn't easy for us to escape. Are we going back to die?" "But Hien is behind us. He can't do it alone." Shen Hong thought of Hien and his eyes turned red. He felt that Hien was a good person. They were just eating pine nuts together. "Didn't he ask us to go down the mountain to find the instructor?" The recruit beside Zheng Xian said. "Let's go down the mountain and tell the instructor to save him." No. Shen Hong looked at Zhang Xian in disbelief. Zhang Xian's expression didn't change. If we tell the instructor, he will know that we went over the mountain. He just saved us. If it wasn't for He Yan, we would be dead. Shen Hong said loudly. You know that the three of us almost died. If he went against the wolves alone, he would definitely die. Zhang Xian's voice was louder than Shen Hong's. Going over the mountain is a violation of military orders. If it's light, you will be punished with a cane. If it's heavy, you will be beheaded. Do you want others to die for He Yan who is already dead? Shen Hong, do you want to do this? Shen Hong was stunned by the roar. He was naturally timid and afraid of trouble. If it weren't for his family's misfortune, he would have been the young master of a medicine shop for the rest of his life. He would have lived a normal life, without illness or disaster. Now that something had happened, he was already flustered. As soon as he heard that Su Hui's head had fallen to the ground, he shuddered in fear. He still had a mother to take care of at home. If he died, there would be no male in the family. How would the old and young live? Shen Hong stammered, unable to speak. After we go down the mountain, pretend that nothing happened. When the sun sets, tell the instructor that He Yan didn't listen to anyone's advice. He climbed the mountain and couldn't find him, Zhang Xian said emotionlessly. This was not only to block He Yan's last way out, but also to frame He Yan with the crime of violating military orders. Shen Hong shook her head, but the other two were already worried that they would be punished, so they agreed. Zhang Xian stared at Shen Hong and said, If you want to complain, go ahead. Let's see if the instructor believes you or us. After saying that, he no longer cared about Shen Hong's expression and urged his horse to gallop forward. Shen Hong had no other choice. The mountain was getting dark, so she could only follow. The sky was getting dark, and there was almost no light in the forest. The horse lost its way on Mount Baiyue. He Yan held the bamboo stick and looked back. He breathed a sigh of relief. He had finally shaken off the wolves. This was the first time he had seen wolves so relentlessly chasing after him. He Yan curled his lips and thought of the wolves he had encountered in Mo County. At that time, there was a famine in Mo County. All the wolves within 100 miles were caught and eaten. They were not as arrogant as the ones on Mount Baiyue. Thinking of this, he felt that Zhang Xuanda was really brainless. Why would he think of catching wolves to raise? Wolves were animals that could not be domesticated. Those that could be domesticated were domestic dogs that would wag their tails at people, while wolves only knew how to bite people's throats. The horse turned in a circle and did not go any further. There were trees everywhere, and they looked exactly the same. She had not been able to make a mark on the trees to avoid the wolves. She was afraid that they had already climbed over the mountain, and did not know where she was. If Shen Hong and the others did not inform Liang Ping in time, they would not be able to leave the forest when it was dark. Without a fire starter, they were afraid of encountering wild animals. They could only spend the night on the mountain. Thinking of this, she sighed and got off the horse. She planned to find a cave to shelter from the wind. Just as she got off the horse and stood up, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She did not know why, but if she had to, it was probably because of her intuition of danger from years of fighting on the battlefield. She subconsciously tilted her head and felt a black shadow pass over her head. Something scratched her neck and brought out a trace of blood. The horse was startled and raised its front hooves. He Yan did not hold the reins tightly, and the horse rushed forward without looking back. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the depths of the forest. She turned her head and saw the black shadow that had just pounced on her. It was crouching in the grass, revealing two green eyes. It was the wolf just now. He Yan looked at the wolf, and then looked in the direction it came from. She suddenly realized, among the few wolves just now, there was actually a smart one. It knew that it could not catch up with He Yan who was riding a horse, so it took a shortcut. Baiwa Mountain was not He Yan's territory, but it was the territory of the mountain beasts. It must have been lurking for a long time, waiting for He Yan to let down her guard, and then pounce on her and bite her throat. In fact, the wolf had almost succeeded. He Yan touched her neck and felt a burning sensation. Her hand was stained with blood. Seeing that its attack had failed, the wolf bared its fangs and pounced on He Yan from behind. Hien rolled on the ground to avoid its claws. She was a little anxious. Now that the horse was gone, she could only fight with the wolf. But she only had this stick. When Shenhong went up the mountain, even if she only had a string of darts, she thought in her heart. She held the stick horizontally and pounced on the wolf's head. The bamboo stick hit the wolf's head. With a bang, it broke from the middle. The wolf's head was hit to the side, but it only bled a little. It looked at Hien and howled furiously twice before pouncing on her again. What kind of broken stick is this? Hien cursed and dodged. The wolf was very cunning. It did not attack from the front. Instead, it pounced on her from behind, intending to bite her neck. Hien dodged a few times, but she did not manage to dodge and was bitten by it. She bent her elbow and stabbed the wolf's stomach. The wolf was hit and cried out in pain, desperately pouncing on her. One person and one wolf wrestled together. The leaves in the forest rustled. Hien forcefully pulled the wolf's head to prevent its mouth from biting her. She thought in her heart, "Do I have to bite this wolf with my mouth?" Just as she thought of this, she suddenly felt that there was nothing under her feet. Before she had time to react, she felt her body fall. She heard a bang sound. The next moment, she and the wolf fell to the ground together. The sky became round, and the tree branches seemed to be higher. Below her feet was bumpy soil, and there was a wolf that had just stood up. She and the wolf fell into the trap together. Chapter 70. The arena became even smaller. It was like an even smaller martial arts stage. The only difference was that her opponent had become a bloodthirsty wild beast. At this moment, Hien didn't have any weapons in his hands. Even the bamboo stick that had been broken into two was gone. The wolf's eyes burst with excitement. It was a smart and cruel animal. In this case, the human would definitely die. Hien's lips curled into a bitter smile. God was so kind to her. Why did he arrange such a difficult situation for her? She was not a miraculous strongman. How could she turn danger into safety every time? This was probably a trap set up by hunters to catch rabbits or foxes. Perhaps it had been too long since the trap was set up, but it was completely covered by dead branches and leaves. Who knew that she would fall into the trap while fighting with the wolf? Now there was no way out. The wolf slowly stood up. Hien also wanted to stand up. She knew it was not good when she moved. When she fell, she hurt her left leg. Now when she moved her left leg, it was painful. She had to stand up with the help of the stone wall. The wolf lowered its body and made a low growl. Hien looked down at it. Her back was against the stone wall. She did not move. It took a few steps and suddenly rushed towards Hien. With its bloody mouth open in front of his eyes, Hien could almost smell the disgusting stench of blood. In front of his eyes, Hien recalled the bones he saw on the roadside that were eaten by wolves. Their bodies were mutilated, their faces unrecognizable, and only a pile of rotten meat was left. In the nick of time, she suddenly stretched out her left arm. The wolf rushed towards her neck, but she slapped it away. She used some strength in this slap, but it was no match for a wild beast. She only protected her neck, but in the next moment, her arm was bitten by the wolf. She did not need to look to know that the bite was not light. She did not care at all. Instead, she moved forward, as if she wanted to put her arm deeper into the wolf's mouth. Before the wolf opened its mouth, Hien's right hand suddenly chopped forward. A blood-curdling scream erupted from the wolf's mouth. The cunning and persistent wolf struggled desperately in the pit. Its eyes were scratched by the sharp stones, and blood splattered everywhere. Hien let go of her hand. In her palm, there was a small piece of shirtu. The sharp end of the shirtu was still stained with blood. She stabbed the wolf's eyes. From the moment she fell into the trap, she looked around for something that could be used to defend herself. Unfortunately, there were only scattered stones in the pit. She simply found the one that could be used. The wolf lost a pair of eyes. It could not see anything. Because of the pain, it could not care about anything else. It could only struggle in the pit. Hien gritted her teeth. Hien leaned against the stone wall. She used all her strength to press the wolf's head. Blood slowly oozed out. At first it was warm, but gradually it became cold. And she slowly His left arm had been bitten by a wolf, and the blood had stuck to his sleeve. He could not lift his left leg, and his neck had been scraped. Needless to say, she was also in a sorry state. But when she looked at the dead wolf, a wave of sadness surged in her heart. She was very similar to the wolf. After losing a pair of eyes, she could only be manipulated by others. Now that she saw the wolf die so miserably, although it was her doing, she thought of all the things that had happened. She felt exhausted. She did not have the strength to do anything else. The sun set. The last of the sunlight disappeared. The forest became dark. She sat quietly with her head lowered. In an instant, it was as if she had stopped breathing. She died quietly. No one in the Liang Province City Guard office knew of the shocking scene on the mountain. When Zhang Xian arrived at the City Guard office, he went with the other two to find the instructor. They purposely stayed at the foot of the mountain for a while before returning. The sun had already set. Only a remnant of the blood-red evening glow was left on the horizon. It spread out brilliantly by the water. Shenhong did not go with them. She returned to her room. When she returned, the others had already finished eating dinner. Seeing Shenhong sitting on the side in a daze, someone asked with a smile, "Hey, how did it feel to go up the mountain today? Why does she look so dazed? She can't be so tired that she's stupid, right? That's possible. Ha ha ha. She can't even do that. She's too weak." Everyone teased her. Thinking that Shenhong was tired, they did not take it to heart and went to do their own things. After a while, Wang Ba walked in. He was in the same room as Shenhong. When Wang Ba came in, the recruits in the room all greeted him. Although Wang Ba lost to He Yan in the crossbow competition, everyone still respected him here. Wang Ba also saw Shenhong sitting on the bed in a daze. He asked casually, "What's wrong with her?" "I don't know. It's her turn to go up the mountain today. When she came back, she was like this," someone replied. Wang Ba glanced at Shenhong. He felt that she was a bit strange. Although he often bullied this honest person, no matter how much he bullied her, he had never seen Shenhong in such a daze. He walked in front of Shenhong and gave her a shove. "What's wrong? Did you encounter a wild beast on the mountain and get scared out of your wits?" It would have been better if he did not say it. Once he said the word wild beast, Shenhong's body trembled even more violently. His mouth opened and closed, but no one knew what he was saying. Wang Ba leaned closer to listen. He only heard her say, "I'm sorry." "Sorry? Who are you sorry to?" Wang Ba frowned and asked. Shenhong was still talking to himself. Wang Ba was impatient. He lifted him up like a chicken and asked, "Brat, tell me everything you encountered on the mountain today. If you don't," he shook his fist threateningly, "I'll teach you a lesson." Shenhong seemed to wake up from his thoughts when he was reminded. Wang Ba looked at him fiercely. He was already feeling guilty. With this provocation, he immediately blurted out, "He Yan? He Yan is still on the mountain." "He Yan?" Wang Ba's heart skipped a beat when he heard He Yan. This person really had a grudge against him. However, he still asked curiously, "What mountain? You guys went up the mountain together today? Why is he still on the mountain after you came down? What do you mean?" "There were wolves, so many wolves. He Yan led the wolves away to save us." Shenhong cried out loud and said everything in one breath. "Zhang Xian didn't let us tell the instructor. He even said that He Yan climbed the mountain and went far away. No, they were the ones who climbed the mountain. He Yan saved them, but they wanted him to die and slandered He Yan. He Yan was alone on the mountain without a weapon. He will die. It's all our fault." He spoke incoherently and incoherently. However, Wang Ba understood the meaning of Shenhong's words in the blink of an eye. He was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, he became angry and slammed his fist on the table, scaring Shenhong. "He saved you. But you left him alone on the mountain?" Shenhong cried. "I didn't want to. I had no choice." Wang Ba looked at him with disdain. "Coward." He turned and left. Chapter 71. When Wang Ba found Liang Jiaodo was talking to Shenhan. Zhang Xian and a few others were standing beside them. Shenhan's expression was extremely ugly. He could only vaguely make out a few words. "Disobeying military orders. Climbing the mountain. Zheng Xian was still talking when someone suddenly rushed over. Before he could react, he felt a heavy punch on his face and fell to the ground. Wang Ba, are you crazy? Liang Ping was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. He shouted at Wang Ba to stop what he was about to do. Liang Jiao, did this brat tell you that He Yan disobeyed military orders and climbed the mountain by himself, and hasn't returned yet? Wang Ba panted. Shen Han and Liang Ping looked at each other. Wang Ba sneered and stared at Zheng Xian, who was crawling up from the ground. This bastard is shameless. Zheng Xian, do you dare to say who saved you? You fucking climbed the mountain by yourself and got surrounded by wolves. If it wasn't for He Yan, would you have been able to escape? You not only ran away by yourself, but you also want to slander others. Are you still a man? Zheng Xian's face was pale. He was beaten until his lips were bleeding. He stood up and wiped the blood off his lips. Instructor, don't listen to his nonsense. He Yan climbed the mountain by himself. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. He pointed to the other 2 recruits who went up the mountain with him. The 2 recruits nodded hurriedly. Yes, He Yan wanted to climb the mountain by himself. We tried to persuade him, but he didn't listen. Wang Ba was furious. He rushed up and wanted to beat them again. Are you speaking human language? That Shen Hong was so timid that it was pitiful. After being scared a little, she confessed everything. How could she have the guts to lie? Moreover, He Yan, although Wang Ba didn't like him very much, he knew that He Yan wouldn't take the initiative to court death. Compared to Zheng Xian, He Yan was much more pleasing to the eye. Liang Jiao stopped Wang Ba and said angrily, "Stop it, all of you. If the commander-in-chief comes, all of you will be punished." What's going on? Speak of the devil. Xiao Ju's voice rang out from behind him as soon as he finished speaking. He walked over from the backyard of the Defense Institute and glanced at the crowd. He walked over and said to Shen Han, "Speak." Shen Han's scalp went numb. He answered honestly. Today they went up the mountain together. He Yan hasn't come back yet. Zheng Xian said that He Yan disobeyed military orders and climbed over the mountain without permission. In the end, he couldn't find anyone and could only rush down the mountain by himself before sunset. That's not what I heard, Wang Ba sneered. These ingrates climbed over the mountain first and provoked the wolves. He Yan lured the wolves away to save them, but these people ran away on their own. They didn't care about their brothers' lives and still wanted to slander them. In our mountain bandits, this kind of person is called immoral. Commander-in-chief, don't listen to him. Zheng Xian hurriedly knelt on the ground. We all tried to persuade He Yan, but he didn't listen and insisted on leaving. At that time, the sky was getting dark, so we had to come back first to ask for help. When he spoke, he was sincere. Xiao Ju glanced at him, but couldn't tell what he was thinking. The sun had completely set, and the last trace of red was swallowed up by the mountain. The forest was silent. If this continued, He Yan's chances of survival would only become slimmer and slimmer. Wang Ba gritted his teeth. Since the instructors aren't willing to take this risk for him, then I'll go save him myself. After he finished speaking, he was about to walk out. I've been the king of this mountain for so many years. I'm not afraid of a few animals. But then again, in this day and age, humans can't compare to animals. He had only taken one step when with a bang, a sword brushed past his scalp and went straight into the wooden stake in front of him, scaring Wang Ba. He turned around and saw their right army commander-in-chief, Xiao Ju, looking unhappy. He warned Liang Jiao, "Liang Ping, take care of your soldiers." Liang Ping. He braced himself and agreed, but in his heart he cried countless times. He thought that this time he would be able to gain a good impression in front of military governor Xiao, but he didn't expect to be called out and criticized. For a moment, he felt disheartened and wished that he had never been here. Shen Han hesitated for a moment, then said, "Commander-in-chief will bring people into the mountain now." "No need," Xiao Ju interrupted him. Wang Ba stared at him in disbelief. Zheng Xian's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. "The terrain on the mountain is complicated. I'm afraid there's a trap. If you can't do it, I'll go," he said. After he finished speaking, he called out, and a black horse galloped over from afar. This horse was very majestic, with 4 snow-white hooves, 2 green ears, and a unique coat of fur. It moved as if it was riding on clouds, stopping in front of Xiaoju and intimately rubbing its head against Xiaoju's hand. This was Xiaoju's favorite horse, Green Ears. Xiaoju mounted the horse. Shenhan wanted to say something, but Xiaoju had already ridden the horse away. Liang Ping asked blankly, "Head instructor, what commander-in-chief said is a trap? Is there anyone else on the mountain?" Shenhan didn't say anything. Of course, he knew that they were suspecting He Yan. This time, He Yan disappeared on the mountain. Who knew if it was intentional? A trap referred to He Yan, not his opponent. Hopefully, they were just overthinking. It was getting colder and colder on the mountain at night. The trap was very deep, and it was difficult for her to climb up alone. Now that she was injured, it was even more difficult for her to move. The smell of blood would attract nearby beasts. If she really walked on the ground, she would be swallowed by the beasts within a few steps. This place was also quite good. He Yan looked up at the sky. The night sky was divided by the trap, and only a round one was left. Looking up from here, she could see the shining galaxy. The night was as cold as water, and countless bright stars formed the shadow of the night sky. She shifted her position, and with her head tilted up, she could see the starry sky and felt a little cold. But in this trap, other than her, there was only the corpse of the wolf. He Yan thought for a moment, and shrank her body into the wolf's stomach. Although it was cold, she still had a body of fur, which could protect her from the cold. He Yan reached out to untie the water bottle at her waist. There was only a mouthful of water left in the bottle. She drank all the water and threw the bottle aside. Cold, hungry and thirsty, she had not experienced this for many years. Suddenly, she remembered what Hong Shan said to her before she left in the morning. "Come back early, let's celebrate the festival together tonight." It was a clear autumn night. The moonlight was like silk, the fireflies were dancing, and the river was white. At the end of the Black Magpie Bridge, He Yan looked up at the stars in the distance and murmured, "Every family is looking at the autumn moon, wearing tens of thousands of red silk." She sighed and smiled helplessly. Today is the Chinese Valentine's Day. In the silent night, the cowherd and the weaver girl were crossing the Magpie Bridge in the distance. A cool breeze blew, blowing away all the joy and hatred. Someone's voice sounded, with a mocking smile. "What? You still want to go to the river with your sweetheart?" He Yan looked up in surprise, only to see a slender figure suddenly appear in the round sky. He stood at the edge of the trap, the moonlight swaying, flowing bright, and looking at her playfully. It was Xiaoju. Chapter 72. In the pit, the young man was leaning against the stone wall. He reeked of blood and half of his body was buried under the wolf's corpse. He was covered in wounds, but he was still in the mood for romance. He looked at her with a pair of bright eyes. They were full of surprise, but there was no trace of joy. Ian blurted out, "Xiao, Commander-in-Chief, why are you here?" At this time, she thought that no one would come. In fact, after thinking about it carefully, the possibility of Zheng Xian finding someone to save her was very slim. Shen Hong was so timid that she probably wouldn't dare to say anything after a little threat. Since she couldn't count on others, she could only rely on herself. He Yan originally wanted to stay here until dawn and wait for the blood on her body to dry. She wanted to recover her strength, and then think of a way to climb out of the pit. She didn't expect that someone would come to save her, and she didn't expect that the person would be Xiaoju. Xiaoju didn't answer her question. She only asked, "Can you come up by yourself?" Ian replied, "No." The pit was crudely made, but it was too deep. She had no strength in her legs and couldn't climb up. Xiaoju looked at her, then turned and left. Ian was confused. What did he mean? He left just like that? After a while, he came back with a long object in his hand. Ian looked at it carefully. Wasn't this the bamboo stick that she broke? Although it was broken in two, it just happened to extend from the top. Ian could hold it. Xiaoju half knelt beside the pit and extended the bamboo stick down. "Hold on." Ian was speechless for a moment. She could only accept her fate and hold on. She thought to herself, "That's right. Do you expect Xiaoju to fly down and carry you out? She felt a chill just thinking about it. This person looked like a beautiful jade, but he was very strong. Ian held on to the bamboo stick, and he pulled it up with one hand. When they were about to reach the exit, he extended a hand to Hien, indicating that Hien should hold on to him. That hand's joints were distinct, slender, and beautiful. Hien was about to reach out his hand, but halfway through, his hand froze in the air. Her hands were stained with blood from the fight with the wolf. She didn't know whether it was wolf blood or human blood, but her hands were sticky. This blood-stained hand, when placed next to Xiaoju's jade-white hand, was really unsightly. Xiaoju loved cleanliness the most. Hien was a little hesitant. However, the man seemed to be impatient. Without waiting for her to figure out what to do, he reached forward, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her up. There was no longer the suffocating smell of blood from the pit outside, and the sky suddenly became much larger. Stars filled the sky as if they were about to fall from the sky. Countless bright stars gathered together, as if they were about to illuminate the entire world. She turned to look at Xiaoju. The young man stood up, threw away the bamboo stick, and stared at her. After a while he said, "You killed a wolf?" Ian didn't understand what kind of question was this. She smiled. "Yes, I almost died. I didn't bring any weapons, so I was smashed to death with sure too. I was even bitten twice." Blood seeped out from the young man's sleeves and dyed his originally red robe a dark color. However, her expression was normal, and she asked indifferently, "Why did the commander-in-chief come here personally? Where are the others?" "It's too late. I came up alone." He tapped his fingers. Hien saw that there was a horse not far away. The horse was not tied up, and when it saw Xiaoju's actions, it obediently ran to Xiaoju's side. Hien saw its green ears under the moonlight. His heart skipped a beat. Everyone knew that General Fengyan loved to ride a horse. It traveled thousands of miles in a day and chased after the wind and lightning. Its name was Green Ears. He didn't expect to see it here today. "Then are we going back now?" Hien asked hesitantly. Xiaoju looked at her incredulously. "You want to spend the night here?" "No, not at all." Hien explained. "I mean, there's no one else here. There's only one horse." Could it be that Xiaoju wanted her to follow him all the way? Wasn't that too tragic? Tragic beyond compare. He patted Green Ear's head, and the horse obediently lowered its head. Xiaoju looked at her. "Get on." Me?" Hien was shocked. Xiaoju was willing to let her ride this peerless horse? Did she hear wrongly? Xiaoju's mouth twitched. "If you want to walk back, it's not impossible." No, I can," Hien replied. "I'm just too happy. What kind of day was it today? She actually got to ride the legendary Green Ears." Hien just wanted to laugh out loud. She limped over to Green Ear's side. This horse was extremely tall and mighty. Originally, the act of flipping onto the horse should have been very dashing. Unfortunately, her entire body was covered in injuries. Even if she wanted to be dashing, she couldn't. She could only grab the saddle with one hand and try to climb up. Hien's leg was injured. Her arm was bitten by a wolf. When she exerted force, the blood that had just dried up immediately seeped out. In the blink of an eye, half of her sleeve was wet. Her face was as usual. Her face was already pale, but she still had a smile on her face. Big drops of sweat rolled down her forehead and her hair was wet. This person didn't know how embarrassing she was. Xiaoju raised her eyebrows slightly. Hien was still climbing up with her hands and feet. Suddenly, someone's voice came from above. He said, "Don't you feel pain?" Hien was stunned. In the next moment, someone grabbed her waist and pulled her up. Before she could cry out in surprise, she was already sitting on the back of the horse. There was another person behind her, and the faint scent of moon qilin drifted over, disturbing her thoughts. "Sit tight," Xiaoju said. Hien couldn't describe her feelings at this moment. She really didn't expect Xiaoju to carry her onto the horse's back. It should be a hug, right? She didn't feel it clearly. It was too fast. But now he was sitting behind her. Hien was petite and her head was leaning against his chest. It was like she was in his arms. She was frightened by her own thoughts. Subconsciously, she didn't feel shy, but scared. Xiao Ju wasn't a romantic person. Moreover, she was a man now. Was everything that happened today just a dream? Xiao Ju urged the horse to leave. He Yan said, "Wait, wait." He asked, "What's wrong now?" "Look at that wolf." He Yan pointed at the wolf's corpse in the pit. "It wasn't easy for me to kill it. It's a pity to just leave it here." The man replied coldly. "What do you want? Take it with us?" He Yan asked tentatively. After a while, the young man sneered. "Yes." "Really?" He Yan turned around in surprise. "Commander-in-Chief, you're such a good person." She didn't expect much. He curved his lips and looked indifferent. "Let it come up. You get off." He Yan was speechless. She said, "Pretend I didn't say anything." The horse took 2 steps and she turned around again. She almost bumped into Xiaoju. "Why don't I go down and skin the wolf before leaving? It's going to be autumn soon. The weather is cold. Wouldn't it be better to make a pair of wolf-skin boots?" She was answered with 2 heartless words. "Shut up." Chapter 73. The horse trotted in the deep mountains. It didn't run very fast. Because it was night, she couldn't see clearly. He Yan felt that it was a pity. It wasn't easy for her to ride Green Ear, but she didn't experience the legendary crossing mountains and treading water as if it were flat ground. It was really a loss. Starlight and moonlight seeped through the branches and leaves of the forest. He Yan rode on the horse and finally had the mood to look at the surrounding scenery. Looking around, she saw a wolf lying on the ground not far away. It must be dead. She was surprised for a moment. She took a few more steps forward and saw another wolf corpse. After seeing about 3 such wolf corpses, He Yan sensed that this was not a coincidence. She swallowed her saliva and asked carefully, "Xiao, Commander-in-Chief, did you do all these?" "Since I met them on the road, I killed them. Otherwise it would be troublesome to follow them all the way," he replied. He Yan sighed in his heart. Look, as expected of a young killer. Just a word of disagreement, and he started a massacre. No wonder they didn't encounter any wild wolves along the way. It turned out that the more courageous ones were all killed by Xiaoju. She looked at the wolf corpses again. They were all killed with a sword. The wounds were very small and very precise. Her gaze moved down slightly, and landed on the sword on Xiaoju's waist. Everyone knew that General Fengyan had a famous horse and a treasured sword. The horse was called Green Ear, and the sword was called Autumn Drinker. Her Qinglang sword was glowing with a green light, and could cut iron like mud. It was rumored that Autumn Drinker was sparkling and translucent, like frost and snow. Autumn Drinker was now on Xiaoju's waist. The sword was not out of its scabbard, so nothing could be seen. These wolves must have died under Autumn Drinker's sword. Since ancient times, treasured swords were given to heroes. He Yan felt that she could be considered a hero. When she saw a treasured sword, she couldn't help but want to touch it. She quietly reached out and touched behind her back. Suddenly, she felt the body under her hand stiffen. He Yan immediately let go and shouted, "I didn't mean to touch your waist. I just wanted to touch your sword." After a while, she heard the angry voice of someone behind her. "You don't have to speak. I'll be bored to death if I don't talk," He Yan said. "Commander-in-Chief, you don't have to be so serious," she said. "Look, you killed so many wolves, but you didn't take them away. In the end, these wolves were taken advantage of by the foxes in the mountains. Not to mention the meat, the wolf's skin was the best. The fur of the one I killed was incomplete, and could only be used to make boots. But the few you killed didn't damage their fur. It's enough to make a cloak. However, the wolf fur cloak doesn't suit you. Presumably, the material of your clothes is more precious. Why not let me take advantage of it? In winter, I have a wolf fur cloak, and I can roll in the snow." Xiaoju seemed to be confused by her nonsense. He actually continued her words, although his tone was not very good. He curled his lips and said sarcastically, "You like wolf skin so much. No wonder you didn't even let go of the dead wolf in the pit." "That's not it. I'm just too cold." He Yan shook his head. "Governor loves cleanliness and doesn't like dirt." He can't tolerate the blood of animals staining his clothes. We're different. Not to mention dead wolves. I've even slept in a pile of corpses. After a moment of silence, Xiaoju asked, when? It was when I was young. I don't remember it clearly. He Yan looked at the stars in the sky. At that time, I had no choice but to save my life. So what if it was a pile of corpses? After all, I was the only one who survived. She thought that Xiaoju would ask her what happened, and was prepared to make up a story. Unexpectedly, Xiaoju didn't ask, so her prepared story fell through. He Yan's thoughts went back to the past. Not long after she arrived at the Mo County, a group of Fuyue army recruits encountered the Xichang people at the edge of the desert. They were all recruits and didn't know how to fight. They just relied on their blood. But their blood was quickly dispersed by the Xichang people's savagery. In the end, the small group of recruits was completely wiped out. He Yan was also seriously injured at that time, but she didn't die. She hid under the corpses and still had a breath left. The Xichang people set the corpses on fire and left. At that time, He Yan thought that she was doomed and would die in this desert. But God didn't let her die. It suddenly rained in the middle of the road, and the rain extinguished the flames on the corpses. Ian didn't have the strength to move. She didn't dare to move. She didn't even dare to cry. The young man who was fooling around with her yesterday was now a corpse that couldn't move. The brother who was scolding her in the morning was already decapitated. She lay in the wreckage and experienced the cruelty of war for the first time. She lay in the pile of corpses and smelled the blood. She cried all night with her eyes wide open. At daybreak, a passerby passed by. He buried all the corpses on the spot and helped them collect their corpses. He also found He Yan, who was on her last breath, and saved her life. Later on, He Yan thought countless times that although she was a man in the capital, she wasn't strong enough. In her heart, she probably left herself a way out. But after that night, she didn't leave herself a way out. She wasn't a girl. No one could wipe away her tears on the battlefield. The only thing she had to do was to survive every life and death battle. At any time, surviving was the most important thing. In order to survive, so what if she had to stay with the wolf corpses? When necessary, if she really couldn't get out, she could eat the wolf meat raw. But Xiaoju probably couldn't understand. He Yan sighed softly in her heart. At this time, she really felt a little cold. The young man was wearing black clothes and black armor. He Yan was a little afraid of dirtying his clothes, so she didn't dare to lean back. But she couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. From this angle, she could see his beautiful jawline. Xiaoju was really good-looking. He Yan couldn't help but admit this fact in both her previous and current lives. He was born handsome and heroic. Although he was indifferent, there was always a touch of laziness that made people's hearts itch. The most beautiful thing about him was his pair of eyes. They were clear and cold like autumn water. It was as if nothing in the world was reflected in his eyes. People couldn't help but think about how gentle his eyes would be when he looked at someone seriously one day. She also remembered when they were in the pit. Xiaoju had stretched out his hand to her. Inexplicably, she thought. Fingers as sharp and long as the bamboo shoots in spring. Eyes as clear and jade-green as the ripples in autumn. She felt that this description was indeed very suitable for this person. No wonder he was called Jade-Faced Commander-in-Chief. Thinking about it, she really couldn't accept it. They were both young generals. Why was he called Jade-Faced Commander-in-Chief, while she could only be called Masked General? He Yan thought that if she had taken off her mask at that time, she might have been called Panin of the Army, or something. She was still thinking about it, but she didn't know that she was looking at Xiaoju's face with admiration one moment, and sighing in disappointment the next. She looked like a lunatic. In Xiaoju's eyes, it was really strange. It was also very stupid. Chapter 74. After crossing the mountain, the road became easier to travel. Xiaoju started to trot on the horse. He Yan fell asleep unknowingly. After some time, someone tapped his shoulder and called his name, He Yan. She opened her eyes and saw Liang Jiaodo standing in front of her. She was still leaning on Xiaoju and dozing off. There was a faint trace of wetness on the inside of Xiaoju's sleeve. She wasn't sure if it was her saliva. He Yen wiped his mouth and said apologetically, "I'm so sorry." Before she could finish speaking, the man had already dismounted from his horse, almost causing her to fall backwards. Xiao Ju said to Liang Ping, "I'll leave it to you." She didn't even look at He Yen and walked away. He Yen was speechless. Look, he didn't even give her a chance to thank him. He Yen shrugged and Liang Ping helped her down from the horse. Green Ears was a good boy. After He Yen left, he stomped his little hooves and went to find his master. He Yen was covered in blood. Even though Liang Ping had a lot of questions, he couldn't ask them now. He only asked, "Can you still move?" Liang Jiao underestimated me. She smiled and said, "I'm fine." Liang Ping sighed and said, "Forget it, I'll send you back first and bandage your wounds. We'll talk about it later." He Yen immediately agreed. In the room, Xiao Mai, Shi Tu and the others were waiting. As soon as He Yen entered, a group of people surrounded him and asked him questions. "How are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? Why is there so much blood? Did someone die?" He Yen even saw Wang Ba sitting on a box in the corner. When he saw her, he seemed to want to go up to her, but in the end he held himself back and snorted, "So you're not dead." "Thank you, little brother." He Yen already knew from Liang Ping that it was Wang Ba who went to look for Shen Han. He blinked at him and said with relief, "Little brother is so concerned about me. Boss is very touched." "You." Wang Ba was like an angry cat. She jumped up from the box, glared at her, and walked away angrily. Before she left, she almost broke the door. He Yen was helped to his bed and sat down. Shi Tu handed He Yen a bowl of water. He Yen finished it in one gulp and felt that his throat finally felt better. Xiao Mai said, "Ehigu, your hand is bleeding. Hurry up and change your clothes." He Yen coughed softly. "It's actually not that serious." "It's not serious." Hong Shan frowned. "If military governor Xiao didn't go up the mountain to find you, would you still be alive tomorrow morning? You shouldn't try to be a hero." Jiang Jiao also came. "It's not worth it for that kind of person." "That's right." Huang Xiong pinched the prayer beads around his neck. "They should be fed to the wolves." He Yen. She looked at the room full of people. For the first time, she realized that she was so popular. However, there were so many people that it was so noisy that her head hurt. In the midst of the chatter, someone pushed the door open and came in. Her voice was like an aureole. "You all can leave. I'm here to deliver the medicine." The room instantly became silent. He Yen looked over curiously and saw the crowd automatically make way for a young woman to walk in. This woman was wearing a palace satin dress. Her long hair was tied up in a bun with a snow-white ribbon and a lotus jade hairpin. It was simple yet beautiful. Her jade-like face was light, and her eyes were bright. She was very beautiful. Even the mosquitoes in the Liangzhou guard station were male. They had never seen such an elegant and refined beauty. For a moment, these men were as silent as cicadas in winter. They were afraid to disturb this lovely fairy. Yen was confused. He only asked, "You are?" "I'm a doctor of the Liangzhou guards." The woman said softly, "Shinmuxua." Yen felt that this name was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. Shinmuxua had already placed the bowl of medicine on the bedside. He turned around and said to the others, "Could you all please leave for a moment?" Angshan immediately blushed. He said okay. He shouted and drove the others out. Before he left, he even gave Yen an envious look. Yen asked, "Is this medicine for me?" Shinmuxua nodded. Yen picked up the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. Shinmuxua was stunned. He said, "Actually, you don't have to drink it so quickly." "Ah." Yen scratched his head. "I have to drink it anyway." Shinmuxua seemed to be amused by him. She smiled and said, "Then little brother, take off your clothes first. I'll apply the medicine for you." Yen hesitated for a moment. He said, Miss Shin, you can just put the medicine here. I'll apply it myself." "You?" Shinmuxua shook his head. "Let me do it. You're still young and a girl." Yen advised her earnestly. "I'm a man. It's not good for you to look at me. There's no difference between men and women in front of doctors." Shinmuxua replied. Yen thought for a moment. "It doesn't matter to you, But it matters to me. Shinmushua raised her head. He Yin fearlessly looked back at her and said, I have a fiancé. Miss Shin, my body can only be seen by my fiancé. My body is as clean as ice and as clean as jade. If you taint it, you have to take responsibility. Do you understand? He wrapped his clothes tightly around himself. He looked as if he would rather die than submit. Shinmushua had probably never seen such a shameless person. He stopped what he was doing and looked at her, not knowing how to react. You can just leave the medicine here, Yin said. I'll apply the medicine myself. I want to keep my body clean for my sweetheart. Don't harm me. He looked serious. Shinmushua was speechless for a moment. She was finally defeated by Yan's shamelessness. She said, the medicine and hot water are here. I'll go out. Call me when you're done. Yan nodded happily. Thank you for your understanding. Shinmushua left. Yan breathed a sigh of relief. She hurriedly took off her blood-stained clothes. She dipped a handkerchief in hot water and wiped her body. Then, she changed into a clean set of clothes. She rolled up her sleeves. Her elbow, which had been bitten by the wolf, was badly mutilated. It was a horrible sight. Yin took a deep breath. She changed her handkerchief and was about to clean the bloodstains on her wound. At this moment, the door was pushed open again. Yin was busy wiping her wound. He said without raising his head, Didn't I say that you don't need to come in? I'll apply the medicine myself. A cold voice sounded. You're really moved by your fiancé's chastity. Yin raised her head. Xiaoju was standing a few steps away from her. She crossed her arms and looked at her calmly. Yin thought that it was a close call. Fortunately, she had moved quickly and changed her clothes. She squeezed out a smile. Why is the commander-in-chief here? Don't tell me that you're here to settle the score with me? I've already said that I didn't touch your waist on purpose when we were on the mountain. Xiaoju's expression froze. Her eyes were almost burning with anger. She raised her hand and threw a round object into Yan's arms. Yan picked it up and saw that it was an exquisite porcelain bottle. It looked like a mandarin duck pot. She pulled out the stopper and sniffed it. It was bitter and astringent. This is medicine? She asked hesitantly. That person said angrily. Treat your own wound first. These words and this scene were inexplicably familiar. Yan was slightly startled. She looked at him again. He had just changed his clothes. They were neat and new. He stood there looking majestic. The moonlight shone in from outside and shone on his tall figure. For a moment, it was as if they had returned to the past. It was the same. Chapter 75. When Yan was young, she wasn't as smart as she was now. If she were to look at her past self with her current eyes, she would feel that she was too slow. At that time, she wasn't very good at both civil and martial arts. She was about the same as Chung Li Su now. She could also be considered a good-for-nothing young master. However, unlike Chung Li Su, who had a powerful uncle to protect her, the He family wasn't considered much in the Xianchang dojo. Therefore, she wasn't as likable as Chung Li Su. Moreover, when she was young, she always wore a mask all day long. She always looked out of place with everyone else. Because she had a guilty conscience, she never dared to hang out with the other youths to avoid giving herself away. After a while, she was ostracized by the other students of the Xianchang dojo. The rejection of the youths came very directly. At first, they just didn't play with her. When they played Kuju, they didn't call her. Later, it became even worse. As for the reason, it wasn't a big deal. It was actually because she worked too hard. When Yan was young, he had a one-track mind. He grasped the principle of the clumsy bird flies first. He really started from being a clumsy bird. The worse the civil and martial sciences, the more he wanted to study. He studied more seriously than anyone else. Even though the teachers of the Xianchang dojo felt that this child really wasn't suited for studying and practicing martial arts, they were often moved by Yan's persistence in studying. Therefore, they often praised Yan in class. Studying diligently is like a sprout in spring. It doesn't seem to grow, but it grows day by day. You all look at Hirufei. You should learn from him. They were all 14 or 15 years old youths. They had always loved to compete and win. It was fine if they learned from others, but why should they learn from Hien? Why should they learn from him, who was always last place even though he worked hard every day? Was there something wrong with his brain? However, the teachers seemed to like Hien very much. Anger rose from the hearts of the youths. Jealousy and disdain mixed together. They found the masked boy more and more unpleasing to the eye. Every 3 to 5 days, they would give Hien some trouble. Today they deliberately cut Hien's clothes during the knife competition. Tomorrow, they would feed Sneeze grass to her horse during horse training. Sometimes, they would deliberately poke holes in her boots. When she accidentally fell to the ground, they would let the stones cut her soles. Hien crawled up from the ground in a sorry state. The teenagers hid together and laughed at her. Hien was stupid when he was a teenager, so he couldn't complain to the teachers. The teachers didn't know what the students did in private. Hien had a difficult time. One day it was winter and the weather was very cold. When the young men were practicing their swordsmanship in the academy, someone splashed a basin of water on the ground. The water quickly froze on the ground. They urged Hien outside. Hirufei, hurry up, the teacher is calling for you. Hien ran out in a hurry, slipped, and fell flat on his face. That fall was very heavy. She only felt that she was seeing stars and couldn't get up for a long time. The few youths who were hiding in the corner laughed and said, "He really fell for it." Hien sat in the same place for a long time before she stood up. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. The students of the Xianchang dojo returned home once a month. The clothes she brought this month were not clean. She was teased every few days. Even immortals didn't have so many clothes. In this weather, the sun hadn't been seen for a long time, so it was hard to dry them. Hien spent the whole day wearing half-wet clothes. At night, she crawled out of bed. She didn't go to practice her swordsmanship. Instead, she ran to the main hall of the academy. Even a clay figurine had 3 points of temper. Moreover, she was the eldest young master of the He family, so she had a bit of temper. However, she still knew how to judge the situation. Those youths were tall and strong, and their skills were much better than hers. She couldn't beat them. Could it be that she had to let it go? Absolutely impossible. How could she vent her anger? The 14-year-old Hien thought for a long time and finally came up with a solution. It snowed at night. She wore clothes that were still wet and braved the wind and snow to fetch a bucket of water from the well in the backyard. She carried the bucket of water and ran to the main hall. She remembered where the group of youths sat during the day. She found their copybooks under their tables. This month, the teacher's homework was to copy the character training 5 times. Tomorrow was the end of the month when the homework was handed in. Hien splashed the entire bucket of water on it. The water instantly soaked the handwriting, turning it into a large blurred piece. Hien let out a sigh of relief. Her heart suddenly felt happy. After the happiness, a trace of nervousness floated up. She hurriedly stuffed the copybook back to its original position. She carried the empty bucket and hurriedly ran out. However, this was the first time she did this kind of thing. It was inevitable that she was nervous. At night, she didn't dare to turn on the light. When she walked to the door, she didn't look at the threshold under her feet. With a paw sound, she fell solidly. She was in so much pain that she sucked in a breath of cold air. She fell twice in one day, and this time was even worse. Her elbow hit the wooden splinter on the threshold, and a cut was made. Blood flowed out. Hien struggled to sit up. She raised her arm and thought to herself, "Is this what they mean by evil is doomed to destruction?" She had only done it once, all right? The heavens were too harsh on her. No matter what, she had to quickly return the bucket. Bucket, that's right. Where was her bucket? She just remembered that she had fallen so hard. When the bucket fell to the ground, it should have made a loud noise and awakened everyone. Why was it still so quiet? Hien looked up in confusion. She stood up and walked 2 steps forward. She didn't know when someone was standing outside the door. He was lazily leaning against the wooden door with his back facing Hien. He was holding an iron bucket in his hand. It was actually Xiaoju. For a moment, Hien was so nervous that she didn't dare to speak. He saw it. He didn't see it, right? Impossible, he must have seen it. He was still holding the bucket in his hand. But if he didn't see it, how could she explain it? Watering the flowers in the middle of the night? Yan's imagination ran wild. The young man saw her standing there in a daze. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't you feel pain?" Yan. His gaze fell on Yan's elbow. Because she had to draw water. She had rolled up her sleeves. On her white and tender elbow, there was a bloodstain that looked like an ugly embroidery. It was particularly obvious under the weak light of the lantern. Yan subconsciously wanted to hide her hand behind her back. The young man looked at her impatiently and said coldly, "Follow me." Yan didn't know why she listened to him. She was probably scared silly and followed him in a daze. Xiaoju first put the iron bucket back by the well. He turned around and saw that she was still in a daze with her arm raised. He sneered and looked at her meaningfully. "You're so timid and you're still doing bad things." Yan clenched her fists and didn't speak. She was very nervous. Usually, Xiaoju only hung out with a few of his close friends. He wasn't close to the other boys in the school. Yan didn't know what this person was thinking. If he reported her, a cold pot was thrown into her arms. Yan looked down. It seemed to be a mandarin duck pot. The pot was exquisite and carved with complicated patterns. She heard her own voice, which was as soft as a mosquito. "What is this? You don't know how to use it?" The young man turned around and said lazily, "Medicine." Chapter 76. Yan held the mandarin duck pot in a daze. A voice pulled her thoughts back to the present. "You don't know how to use it?" She raised her head. A young man in a dark blue robe had already sat down on the stool in front of her bed and taken the pot from her hands. The mandarin duck pot had a secret mechanism. One pot could hold 2 kinds of wine, and it was an essential tool for poisoning people. He tore off a piece of white cloth and poured out a little bit, then a little bit more. The first thing that flowed out was the medicinal juice, then the medicinal powder. There was a small spoon embedded next to the handle of the pot. Xiaoju took the spoon and slowly spread the liquid evenly. When he lowered his eyes to do this, his long eyelashes drooped down. The outline of his face was handsome, and there was a hint of youthful delicateness. It made people feel uneasy, and they didn't know whether they were in the Liang province guards or in the Xianchangguan thousands of li away. While Yan was in a daze, he had already finished applying the ointment on the white cloth and tossed it to Yan. His tone was extremely cold. "Do it yourself." "Oh." Yan had already expected this. She muttered in a small voice, "I didn't expect you to help me." He heard her and stared at Yan with a half-smile. "I don't dare delay your chastity. It's good that you know." Yan smiled. "But I still have to thank you, Governor, for giving me such precious medicine. There is a shortage of medicine in the guard station, unless you want to die," he said. Yan looked at him solemnly. "You saved my life. I didn't expect the governor to be such a protective person." Xiaoju sneered. "I don't know what you're talking about." He stood up and left. Yan saw that he was really leaving this time. Only then did he lean against the headboard and sigh softly. Xiaoju's medicine was very effective. It was cool and refreshing, and when he applied it, the pain lessened a lot. Yan looked at the pot, his thoughts drifting away. On that snowy night when he was 14, Xiaoju was not as cold as he was now. At least, when Yan said, "I don't know how to use it," he not only helped open the mandarin duck pot, but also personally applied the medicine for her. It was very strange. The scene at the time was already very blurry, but now that Xiaoju was like this, the details that had been forgotten slowly unfolded in front of Yan's eyes. It was as if it had just happened, unbelievably clear. She sat on a stone bench in the courtyard. The usually lazy and indifferent young man was surprisingly patient as he applied medicine for her. His face was like a painting of his face. To the way. Yan was young at that time and had no resistance. He was defeated in an instant. After applying the medicine, he left. Yan whispered to him, "Your medicine. It's for you." The young man casually replied, "You're so stupid. You'll have a lot of chances to get hurt in the future. Keep it for yourself." His words came true. Later on, she had countless chances to get hurt. The ointment in the mandarin duck pot had long been used up, and the pot was later lost by her in a battle. Thinking about it, it was quite a pity. The next day, the young men went to the school. They found that the copybooks on their desks were wet with water. The handwriting was unrecognizable. It was a mess. Who did it? Come out. I promise I won't beat him to death. They roared fiercely. Isn't it simple? See whose copybook is clean. Look inside. We'll find the one who has a grudge against us. Someone offered a brilliant idea. Yan's heart tightened. He was very annoyed. No wonder she said he was stupid. He didn't even think of this. Her copybook was clean and tidy. After a little inspection, wasn't it him? Forget it. He had already done it. He was a real man. He dared to take responsibility for his actions. She steeled her heart and accepted her fate. She looked on helplessly as the young men asked the students in the school to take out their copybooks for inspection. They were almost in front of her. Yan gathered his courage and was about to stand up and shout, I did it. Suddenly, someone came in and slammed it on the table. This movement was too loud. Everyone looked over and saw a handsome young man in a white robe leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He had a lazy expression and said carelessly, I did it. There was an uproar. Brother Huijin, did you really do it? Someone asked carefully. Xiao Huijin was not Hirufei. Who in the capital dared to provoke him? Xiao family could oppress people to death. Even the teacher had to protect him. The emperor had personally praised him. It was me, he answered righteously. But why? That person asked with a sullen face. There's no reason. The young man glanced at him and answered indifferently, my hand slipped. Oofed. Yan couldn't hold back his laughter. Sensing everyone's gaze, he quickly turned around and acted as if nothing had happened. What happened later? Later, the matter was left unsettled. Because it was Xiao Huijin, no one dared to say anything. They could only admit that they were unlucky. Creak. The door was pushed open. Shin Miexu walked in. She took the empty medicine bowl and water basin away. She told Yan not to press on his wound before leaving. From the narrow window in the room, she could see the sky in all four corners. A bright moon hung in the sky and the stars shone brightly. She muttered in a low voice, today is Chinese Valentine's Day. She had never experienced such a festival. In the past, she dressed as a man. This kind of festival had nothing to do with her. Later, when she married Su Zhiheng, at the very beginning, she also looked forward to it. No matter how much she dressed as a man, when she put on makeup, she only wanted to be like an ordinary girl. She wanted to go to the riverside with her sweetheart to release flower boats, worship the immortal he steam fruit, and go to the temple fair. She heard that there were fireflies on the mountain. She gathered her courage and asked Su Zhiheng for the first time. Su Zhiheng smiled and agreed, okay. But before Chinese Valentine's Day, she was blinded. As a result, this matter seemed to be forgotten. Su Zhiheng didn't take the initiative to bring it up again. Yan also didn't mention it. She thought that perhaps he was worried about her illness and didn't have the mood to talk about it. Until the next day, Huanru passed by her door. She smiled and asked someone to put away the lantern Su Zhiheng gave her the day before. She just found out that on Chinese Valentine's Day, Su Zhiheng wasn't at home. It wasn't because of official business, but because he accompanied Huanru to the temple fair. Life was full of different things. She didn't know how she was doing as a man, but she knew that as a woman, she was really terrible. Just as she was thinking, Hong Shan came in from outside. He saw the mandarin duck pot in her hand and joked, "Oh, our commander-in-chief gave you a Chinese Valentine's Day gift. What kind of good wine is it? Let big brother have a taste." Yan was stunned for a moment and suddenly laughed. Thinking about it now, this Chinese Valentine's Day wasn't too bad. She rode a horse with the man in the dreams of countless Dawei women. She touched his waist, rode his horse, walked through the mountain roads, saw the starry sky, and finally received a pot of spirit medicine for free. She didn't waste her life. Chapter 77. Zheng Xian and 2 new recruits were standing beside the practice field of the Liangzhou Guard. Seeing Xiao Ju approach, Shen Han hurried forward. Commander-in-Chief. I heard that the person was found? Shen Han asked. Liang Ping is keeping an eye on him. Shen Han sighed in relief. He Yan was currently under suspicion. If he suddenly disappeared, it might have been intentional. It was safer to keep suspicious people under one's nose. However, since the person had been found, it was time to consider another matter. Zheng Xian said that He Yan crossed the mountain by himself. Shen Hong said that He Yan crossed the mountain to save Zheng Xian. Commander-in-Chief, what do you think? Shen Han asked. Xiao Ju said. Zheng Xian is lying. Shen Han paused. There are hoof prints on the mountain path. I also found traces of a wolf cub falling to its death, Xiao Ju said. He Yan was indeed saving someone. Shen Han's expression darkened. If that's the case, Zheng Xian and the others are not righteous. No matter how outstanding these new recruits were, once they entered the battlefield in the future, who knew if they would change sides at the last moment? Soldiers could die under the enemy's blade, but they could not die under the secret arrows of their comrades. However, Shen Han thought of another matter. If He Yan's words are true, can she be cleared of suspicion? If He Yan was someone who would disregard his own life for his comrades, perhaps he should change his view of her. No. Xiao Ju's cold voice answered him. He killed a wolf with his bare hands in the pit on the mountain. This person cannot be underestimated. He raised his eyebrows. I'm afraid he has secrets. Shen Han did not dare to say anything more. Although the Liangzhou Guard was thousands of li away from the capital, the situation was complicated. No one dared to lower their guard. Shen Han looked at Zheng Xian and the others. They were sitting far away. At this moment, their expressions were uneasy. Although Zheng Xian tried his best to remain calm, he did not know that his lie had been exposed. Commander-in-Chief, how do you plan to deal with these people? Shen Han asked. They crossed the line and interfered with others. They have a sharp tongue and are unscrupulous. Xiao Ju's expression did not change. Her voice was calm. For slandering the army, behead them. Shen Han's heart trembled. He bowed his head and said, yes. When He Yan woke up the next day, the sun was already high in the sky. There was no one in the room. She sat up and stared blankly at the sunlight coming through the window. He Yan asked. He Yan asked curiously, Mississippi. He Yan was surprised. He asked. Miss? He asked. He Yan asked. He asked. Asked. This is today's medicine. Take it first. Shen Wuxia placed the bowl of medicine on the small table in He Yan's room. Yesterday, the governor gave you some medicine for external injuries. You can change it every 6 hours. Disappeared. Why didn't they call me? I told Liang Jiao that your body still needs to rest. It is not convenient for you to practice in the martial arts arena today. Shen Wuxia replied. He Yan responded and looked at Shen Wuxia. This girl was only 16 or 17 years old. Her skin was like cream and she was extremely beautiful. The most important thing was that she had a tranquil and leisurely temperament that made people feel comfortable in their hearts. Probably because He Yan was looking at her, Shen Wuxia frowned slightly. Little brother, is there something wrong? Nothing, He Yan said. I just feel that Miss Shen looks familiar. I seem to have seen you somewhere before. Shen Wuxia was stunned for a moment. Then she shook her head and smiled. I have never seen little brother before. I probably remembered wrongly. Okay. He Yan scratched his head. Shen Wuxia saw that He Yan had finished drinking the medicine. She took the medicine bowl away and left the room. He Yan did not know what to do. Fortunately, this kind of daze did not last long. Someone knocked on the door again. Who is it? He Yan asked. A careful voice sounded. It's me. He Yan was stunned. A head popped out from the door. It was Shen Hong. He did not know where he came from. His face was very pale and his lips were purple. He was not as lively as he was when they first met. He limped in, not daring to look at He Yan's face. He walked to He Yan's bedside and said, I'm sorry. He Yan already knew the ins and outs of the matter from Hongshan. He said, It's okay. Didn't you tell them the truth? But I almost. Shen Hong's face was full of guilt. Yin could understand. Shen Hong had not experienced much before and was timid. She must have panicked after being threatened by Zheng Xian. She said, "Am I not fine now?" Shen Hong nodded her head silently. "When you first came in, you walked a little strangely." Yin asked, "What happened?" I violated a military order and was beaten 40 times. Shen Hong said, "In the future, I will be a squad leader. I will not go to the front line." Yin was silent. 40 times. No wonder Shen Hong's face was so pale. She was lucky that she did not die. What about the others? Zheng Xian and 2 others were beheaded in front of all the recruits. Shen Hong said with a pale face. Yin was not surprised. When she was General Fei Hong, she had heard of General Feng Yun's evil reputation. The discipline in the military was extremely strict. There was once a son of a high official who came to the Nanfu army to make a name for himself. But because he violated military discipline, he was ordered to be beheaded by the Xiaoju. At the time, the high official did not let it go and reported it to the emperor. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Other people might say that the Xiaoju was cruel. But if it was not so, he would not be able to control the Nanfu army, and would not have come to this step today. Actually, being a squad leader is not bad. Yin patted his shoulder. "You have a gentle and kind personality. You do not dare to kill on the front line." Shen Hong forced a smile. She took out a bunch of things from her pocket, and stuffed them into Yan's hand. Yin looked down. It was a bunch of pine nuts. "You are a good person." Shen Hong stammered. "I was too weak before. I let you down and almost caused you to lose your life. These pine nuts are for you. You eat them slowly." He stood up and limped out. As soon as he left, Hong Shan and the others came in and bumped into him. Shen Hong's face reddened, and she left in a hurry. After he left, Hong Shan asked, "What did that kid come here for?" "Probably to bring a bramble and ask for punishment," Xiao Mai said. Higu, where did you get the pine nuts?" Yin put the pine nuts on the table. "If you want to eat it yourself. Why did you guys come back so early? The chief instructor said something today." Shi Tu opened his mouth. "We do not need to run with weights in the next few days." "What is it?" Yin was puzzled. "We have already stayed in the Liang province guard for an entire summer." Hong Shan grabbed a few pine nuts and said as he peeled them. "The chief instructor said that he wants to select the best recruits to go to the vanguard." Yin raised his eyebrows. According to the time, it was indeed about this time. He said that in about 10 days, we will go to the mountains to fight for something. Fight for first place? Fight for the flag. Shi Tu continued his words. "Oh, right. Fight for the flag. Whoever wins the most will be first place, and may be selected to go to the vanguard," Hong Shan said as he chewed on the pine nuts. "Higu definitely won't have a problem." Xiao Mai rested her chin on her hand. "Higu is so powerful. He will definitely get in." Yin smiled and shook his head. If it was only the vanguard, it was naturally nothing. However, if he wanted to enter Xiaoju's 9 Flags battalion, he was afraid that he would need to put in some effort. This was really setting up an arena. Those who were capable would win. Chapter 78. For 4 or 5 days in a row, Yin didn't go to the practice field to practice. Actually, she didn't care about the injury on her leg, but the Liangzhou Guard's female doctor, Xin Muxue, came every day without fail to deliver medicine to her. She also repeatedly warned her not to do any strenuous activities. Hong Shan also jeered from the side. "Just listen to Dr. Nu. If you keep tormenting her, when the day of the battle for the flag comes and you can't get first place, you can't enter the vanguard battalion. Don't cry at that time." Yin thought about it and gave up. She wasn't in a hurry for a day or two. However, these days, as long as she left the practice field, her room was basically full. There was an endless stream of people who came to see her. People often came to visit her. Today, Jiang Jiao sent several sour and astringent plums. Tomorrow, Huang Xiong brought a skewer of roasted quail. The most speechless was Wang Ba. He couldn't bring himself to come, so he had the new recruit in his room send half a gnawed dry bun. One look and you could tell it was a spoil of war he had plundered from someone else. He really did treat the barracks as his own mountain. Liang Jiao came twice. Both times he saw He Yan surrounded by people with a beaming face. He glanced at the mountain of food on her table and sourly said, "Oh, your life is pretty good." Then he left again. He Yan was also very helpless. Just like this, by the time the scab on He Yan's elbow was almost completely healed and her leg could jump on the ground, 7 or 8 days had already passed. The day of the battle for the flag was getting closer and closer. On this day, before the sun set, Hong Shan and the others came back. He Yan was astonished and asked, "It's not time to leave the practice field yet. Why did you all leave?" "Today is the 14th of July, the Hungry Ghost Festival." Xiao Mai rushed to answer. "The head instructor told us to leave the practice field early. After eating, we went to the riverside to light water lanterns to worship our ancestors. The Liangzhou Guard is pretty good. They actually give people time to worship their ancestors and loved ones." Hong Shan sighed. He Yan smiled, thinking that this was a tradition in the military camp. When she was in the Fuyue army, every year during the Hungry Ghost Festival, the local government would set up a Taoist temple for the soldiers who died in battle. Now that the Liang province guards were backed by mountains and rivers, it was very convenient for them to release water lanterns. "Big Brother and I are going to light up water lanterns for our parents." When Xiao Mai talked about her parents who had passed away, she didn't seem sad at all. She only seemed a little sad. Perhaps her parents had passed away too early, so her memory of them was very faint. She asked Hong Shan, "Brother Shan, are you going to pay your respects?" "Go, my mother left early. I'll go light one for my mother." Everyone looked at He Yan at the same time. "Is Ahiga going?" Among them, He Yan's identity was probably the most mysterious. She didn't like to talk about her family's matters with Mai Mai and the others. Hong Shan only knew that He Yan's family had fallen into dire straits, and she had come to join the army because she had nowhere else to go. However, seeing her confident appearance on the martial arts field before, he felt that He Yan wasn't a child from an ordinary family. "Me? I'll go too." He Yan lowered her eyes and lowered her voice. "I also have someone I want to worship." Xiao Mai and the others sensed that the atmosphere wasn't right. They didn't dare to pursue the matter and immediately changed the topic to something more relaxed. After dinner, the sun had completely set and the moonlight seeped through the dark clouds. Almost all of the new recruits of the Liang province guards had come out. The water lanterns had to be folded by themselves. The paper was piled up in a few large baskets in the practice field. Ian also went to get one. She wasn't very good at handwork, so it was Xiao Mai who saw it and folded it into the shape of a lotus lantern for her. She then dripped a white candle into the center of the lotus lantern and handed it to He Yan. "It's done." "Thank you," He Yan praised. "You're really good with your hands." Xiao Mai smiled embarrassedly. "In the past, during the Hungry Ghost Festival, Big Brother and I folded a lot of lanterns to sell. I'm used to folding them. If the paper was bigger, I'd be able to make a prettier and bigger one." Shirtu knocked his head and said disapprovingly, "This isn't the time for you to show off." Xiao Mai stuck out her tongue and ran towards the Wulu River with the water lantern in her hand. "I'll go light the lantern first." "Ahiga, hurry up." After the beginning of autumn, the weather in Liang province became cooler at night. It had rained in the morning, but the cool air had yet to dissipate. The dense forest on the mountain produced cool frost and dew. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse, illuminating the river. The riverside was already crowded with people who came to pay respects to their ancestors. The flickering candlelight illuminated the entire river like thousands of silver flowers, reflecting the dancing flames. The fiery red lotus carried the thoughts of the people who came to pay respects and floated into the distance. It became a bright spot of light at the place where the water met the sky and gradually disappeared. "It's fine here." "Ahigu." Xiao Mai turned around and was stunned. "Where's Ahigu?" Hong Shan and Shirtu looked at each other. "I don't know. He was just here." He Yan sat on Shirtu in the innermost part of the riverside. It was not the most open place, so not many people would light the lantern here. He Yin silently looked at the lotus lantern in her hand. The bitterness in her heart was indescribable. Suddenly, she remembered the moment before He Wanru drowned her in the water. She said to her, "You're pregnant." At that moment, she was actually more happy than confused. However, this happiness didn't last long. She and her unborn child were drowned in the Su family's pond together. He Yin always felt that she had never wronged anyone in her previous life. She had done everything she could to the He family, to He Rufei, and to Su Jiheng. However, the only thing she felt guilty about was the flesh and blood in her belly. She had given him life, but before she could bring him into the world, she had killed this possibility because of herself. Perhaps when she was a general, too many people had died at her hands. She had killed countless people, so the heavens punished her like this. However, it was right to punish herself. Why did she have to punish an innocent child? She didn't even know if the child in her belly was a little girl or a little boy before it died prematurely. He Yin took out a match. The spark from the match splashed on the candle and lit it up in an instant. The water lantern slowly bloomed in her hand. The light from the flame was reflected in her eyes, forming a small flame. It seemed that tears were about to fall from her eyes, but they quickly blurred. "I'm sorry," she said in a low and sad voice. "You and I are not fated to be together in this life. If there is an afterlife, you must be reincarnated into a good family. You must live a happy and worry-free life. Don't ever meet me again. I will also." She put the water lantern into the river. "I will avenge you." The murmuring river gently wrapped around the small water lantern and moved forward. Yin stared at it. It floated until it merged with countless light spots. She couldn't tell who was who. Then she looked away and rubbed her eyes. "He Dage, I didn't think you would be here." An excited voice sounded behind her. "What a coincidence. You also came to release water lanterns." Yin turned around and saw a young man with rosy lips and white teeth. He was holding a lantern in his arms and happily walking towards her. It was Chengli Su. His clothes were neat and new. When he walked to He Yan's side, he carefully lifted the corner of his robe, afraid that the river water would splash it. He gave He Yan a large handful of water lanterns. He Yan asked, "Are you going to release water lanterns?" "Yes." "Why are there so many?" He Yan was speechless. "I originally didn't have so many to release. I don't know the ancestors of my Cheng family. However, I think my uncle won't be coming today. I will release some in his place. This is my maternal aunts, this is my maternal uncles, this is my..." He counted them one by one. There wasn't the slightest bit of sadness on his face. He was so happy that people would mistakenly think that he was releasing lanterns instead of Zhongyuan water lanterns. "Wait a minute," He Yan interrupted him. "Why are you releasing them in your uncle's place? Can't he come himself? There are so many people. He won't come." Chengli Su sighed. He looked as if his heart was broken. He shook his head and said, "I'll do it." "Who told him to be my uncle?" He Yan found it funny. The pain from the past had been diluted quite a bit. Although Chengli Su's brain seemed to be a little less than normal people's, he was still very serious about releasing water lanterns. He lit the water lanterns in his hands one by one and solemnly released them into the river. He was extremely nervous and prayed that they wouldn't be blown out by the wind or knocked over by the waves. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. The water lanterns gradually floated into the distance. After releasing the last lantern, Chengli Su released a breath. He took out a piece of coarse cloth and placed it on the too. Only then did he sit on it. "The Liang province guard is quite cool at night," he muttered. "It was so hot a few days ago. I've never experienced such a hot summer in my life." He Yan laughed in spite of himself. Cheng Lisu used to live in Shuajing. During the summer, the Cheng family would have ice cubes to cool off the heat. He stayed in the Fu all day without the sun. Of course, it wasn't as bad as the Liang province guard. She said, "If that's the case, why did you come with your uncle to Liang province to suffer?" "I had no choice." Cheng Lisu spread his hands. "If I didn't come with my uncle, I would have been engaged." Ian paused. "What?" "I'll tell you a secret. I ran away from the engagement." Cheng Lisu curled his lips. "I'm still young. How could I be engaged? Besides, I don't like her, so I ran away. Hien. This child really was straightforward. However, Hien was even more surprised that Xiao Ju had agreed to bring Cheng Lisu along. He wasn't afraid that the Cheng family would be dissatisfied with him. After all, he had secretly abducted their young master, and even helped the young master escape from the engagement. Even if they were relatives, he was afraid that there would be animosity in their hearts. Your relationship with military governor Xiao is quite good, Hien said, choosing his words carefully. It's all right. Cheng Lisu was extremely proud. I was the one who took the initiative to pester him. Hien felt that it was inconceivable. Your uncle's personality is so terrible. You actually took the initiative to get close to him? Amazing, amazing. Who said that Cheng Lisu was a good-for-nothing prince? Not everyone could endure such humiliation. My uncle is very powerful. If it wasn't for him when I was young, I might not be where I am now. Perhaps it was because of the beautiful moonlight tonight. Cheng Lisu was actually very excited when he talked about the past. Cheng Lisu's mother, Madame Cheng, was actually about the same age as Xiao Ju's mother. Therefore, when Xiao Ju was born, Madame Cheng was already married. Although Cheng Lisu and Xiao Ju were different in terms of seniority, the age difference wasn't that big. Although the Cheng family and Xiao family didn't interact frequently, they were definitely not cold. However, when Cheng Lisu was young, he actually didn't see Xiao Ju much. Most of the time, he spent more time with eldest uncle Xiao Jing. Xiao Zhongwu had 2 sons. Eldest young master Xiao Jing had a weak body when he was young, so it wasn't suitable for him to practice martial arts. After he recovered, he was already past the best age to practice martial arts. Madame Xiao also didn't want Xiao Jing to join the military, so Xiao Jing took the path of a civil official. After Xiao Ju was born, Xiao Zhongwu paid special attention to this son. Xiao Ju didn't disappoint Xiao Zhongwu's expectations. When he was young, he already showed his talent. Xiao Zhongwu brought Xiao Ju to the mountains, where he was personally taught by 4 masters. As for which mountain, and who these masters were, Cheng Lisu didn't know. In any case, he would only see him once a year. Sometimes he wouldn't even see him once. When Xiao Ju turned 14, he went down the mountain and returned to Shuajing. He entered the Xianchang school and studied martial arts with the nobles of Shuajing. That year, Cheng Lisu was 9 years old. When he went out to play with his good friends during the Mid-Autumn Festival, he was kidnapped. At his age, it was reasonable to say that he was too old to be kidnapped. However, he was born with a delicate face, like a silver doll in a New Year's painting. The kidnappers took him out of the city. Cheng Lisu cried for help, but no one answered. He hid in the carriage and shivered. When he woke up, he cried. With tears in his eyes, he ate something and went back to sleep. He didn't know how long he slept, but the sound of fighting came from outside the carriage. Cheng Lisu's nose was bruised and his face was swollen. Just as he was crying for help, the carriage stopped. He hurriedly opened the curtain of the carriage and climbed out. He saw that the ground was covered with corpses. All of them had their throats slit with a sword. It wasn't just one kidnapper who kidnapped him. There were dozens of kidnappers. The kidnapped children were all tied up and stuffed into the carriage. At this moment, some of them fell out, while others were still in the carriage. A group of people cried incessantly. In the chaos, Cheng Lisu trembled as he climbed out. Then he touched the corner of a snow-white robe. He looked up and saw a handsome young man with a silver crown and white robe standing in front of him. He held a long sword. The sword was like frost and snow, dripping with blood. The blood was bright and beautiful, but it was not as red as the young man's lips. His expression was calm as his gaze fell on Cheng Lisu. This was a very fierce picture, but Cheng Lisu felt inexplicably at ease. He trembled as he hugged the young man's leg. He imitated his mother's tone and flattered. May I ask your name? Where do you live? I am the young master of the right minister's residence. You saved me. Our residence will reward you handsomely. The young man's mouth twitched. He looked down at Cheng Lisu with a pair of clear eyes. He said coldly, I am your Jiujiu. Only then did I know that he was the Jiujiu that I had never seen before. Cheng Lisu rested his chin on his hand and looked at the moon. At that time, I thought this Jiujiu is really amazing. Xiao Ju had saved him, as well as the other children who had been abducted. Cheng Lisu felt honored to have such an Jiujiu. He wanted to stick to him. However, Xiao Ju did not like this nephew very much. After sending him back to the Cheng family, he never came to see him again. Cheng Lisu sent him an invitation to be a guest at the residence, but Xiao Ju did not come even once. Moreover, Xiao Ju was very busy. When Cheng Lisu saw Xiao Ju, he rarely saw him. He Yan thought of the scene Cheng Lisu described, and wanted to laugh. Thinking about it, Xiao Ju really had no choice but to have such a nephew. Then how did the two of you become close? He Yan asked. If it was just a life-saving grace, then as Cheng Lisu said, it did not change their relationship much. Then something must have happened later for the uncle and nephew to come to the Liang province guard together. Actually, the Cheng family, including my mother and the relatives and friends who know the Xiao family, do not like Jiujiu. Cheng Lisu said, they like eldest Jiujiu more. The two young masters of the Xiao family were both born to Dawei. The eldest son of the Xiao family, Xiao Jing, was also born with good looks. He was like a jade, modest and bright. In terms of temperament, it was definitely more comfortable to get along with Xiao Jing. However, it was not to the extent that they did not like Xiao Ju. Why? He Yan asked. Didn't military governor Xiao save your life? Even if he was your savior, your mother would not dislike him. That is true, but Jiujiu does not see our relatives often enough. We don't know him well. Before Xiao Ju was 14, he was rarely in Shuajing. After that, he entered the Xianchang mansion. Not to mention relatives and friends. Even Madame Xiao was not close to this son. Cheng Lisu knew that there were a few times when Madame Xiao was talking to her mother. She was worried about how to get along with her son. Since she did not know him well, she naturally had a lot of prejudice. Xiao Ju was originally lazy and did not like to interact with others. Compared to his warm and bright brother, the contrast was even more obvious. However, as He Yan said, it was not that she did not like him. The real dislike was after Xiao Zhongwu died in the Battle of Mingshui. Xiao Zhongwu's death came suddenly, and was a huge blow to the Xiao family. Madame Xiao had never experienced any hardships and treated her husband as her everything. After Xiao Zhongwu's death, Madame Xiao took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, and hanged herself. She followed her husband and left with only 2 sons. The 2 young masters of the Xiao family, Xiao Ju and Xiao Jing, were heartbroken. Xiao Ju did not shed a single tear. After the general and his wife were buried, the first thing Xiao Ju did was to go to the throne room to make a statement. He wanted to take control of the Nanfu army. Before the 7th day of Madame Zhao's death, he led the Nanfu army to quell the chaos of the southern barbarians. That day, Xiao Zhongwu died in the battle of the southern barbarians. Some people said that he was avenging his father, while others said that he was eager for quick success. Whether it was his father's death or his mother's death, Xiao Ju did not show excessive sadness. Thus, the symbol of coldness and ruthlessness and a heart as hard as iron was imprinted on him. Without the noble second young master Xiao in the capital, others could only find out about Xiao Ju's recent situation from the few words that came back from the battlefield. It was rumored that he was a killer at a young age. Countless people had died under his sword. He was also strict and did not care about human feelings. Have you heard of Zhao Nua? Cheng Lisu asked. He Yan faintly felt that the name was familiar, but he did not know where he had heard it before. He shook his head and said, I don't know. Zhao Nua is the eldest son of the current Minister of Revenue. He was once the Jidushi of Jingzhou. When Cheng Lisu said this, her expression dimmed. In fact, the misunderstanding between the Cheng family and the Xiao family towards uncle was caused by this person. Chapter 79. That year, Xiao Ju led the Nanfu army to Jingzhou. Although people knew that second young master Xiao was talented in both the pen and the sword, he was still young and could not take on such an important task. Zhao Nua was the military governor of Jingzhou. He was lustful, greedy, and ignorant. When Xiao Ju first arrived in Jingzhou, he did not take Xiao Ju seriously. He often joked around and was very rude. In the Battle of Jingzhou, Xiao Zhu led the army to the battlefield. Zhao Nua was afraid of death and gave wrong orders, causing many innocent soldiers to die. Xiao Zhu saw that he was so arrogant and ordered people to tie him up and take him away. Zhao Nua's father was the Minister of War, and he had been in Jingzhou for many years. Naturally, there were many people who came to plead for him. There were many high-ranking officials and nobles who came to persuade him. However, Xiao Zhu was young and had no relatives. He is the military governor of Jingzhou and his father is the Minister of Revenue. Many people in the court have good relations with the Zhao family. If you offend him, you will not be able to do anything in the future. Xiao Zhu was not moved. He only smiled contemptuously and said, "Just the Minister of War is so arrogant. Even if he becomes the Prime Minister, I will still execute him." 3 days later, Xiao Zhu led the army to surround Zhao Nua's residence. He pushed Zhao Nua to the tombstone of the dead soldiers and beheaded him. The Zhao family and the Xiao family were actually related to the Cheng family. Cheng Lisu recalled that Zhao Nua, logically speaking, should be related to us. My mother personally wrote a letter to ask uncle to be lenient. But uncle did not listen. He smiled. He looked a little helpless and a little proud. Military Governor Zhao's actions. Isn't he afraid that someone will try to sow discord in front of His Majesty? He Yan thought. His Majesty will also be dissatisfied. As expected of my brother, he asked the same question as me. Cheng Lisu said happily. I also think that uncle's actions are too rash. After a long time had passed, that young man had put away his flirtatious ways, and became introverted and steady. He became the high and mighty commander-in-chief of the Right Army. Cheng Li asked, Uncle, aren't you afraid that His Majesty will be estranged from you because of this? The young man was reading a book. Hearing this, he smiled and said, he wouldn't dare. The emperor didn't dare, but it wasn't that the courtiers weren't afraid. In reality, this was indeed the case. Even though the powerful officials in the imperial court spoke ill of him, and the Minister of Revenue wrote one memorial after another to the throne room asking for punishment, in the end, the matter was left unsettled. It was because Xiao Zhu had led the Southern Mansion army and defeated the southern barbarians like a hot knife through butter. Emperor Xianwen was not blind. He knew how to choose between a dead provincial governor and a one-in-a-million talent. However, Emperor Wenxian did not dare to punish Xiao Zhu, but that did not mean that there would not be any rumors. The Minister of Revenue, Zhao Tong, and Xiao Zhu became enemies. Those who were on good terms with Zhao Tong naturally did not want to see Xiao Zhu doing well. Those who were on good terms with the Xiao family also distanced themselves from Xiao Zhu. Firstly, his personality was cold and strict. He could even order his own relatives to be beheaded without mercy. Secondly, he was arrogant and did not even care about the emperor. It was inevitable that he would offend others in the future. One day he might even implicate his friends and family. The Cheng family and the Xiao family were close relatives, so they didn't break off contact. However, compared to Xiao Zhu, they preferred to interact with Xiao Jing. My mother told me not to get too close to little uncle, Cheng Lisu said. She said that he doesn't care about family ties. He Yan thought for a moment. Military Governor Xiao is not that kind of person. I know, Cheng Lisu smiled. I always knew. The Xiao family had 2 young masters. The eldest young master was calm and gentle. When they interacted with each other, it was like a spring breeze. He was friendly and warm-hearted. Everyone loved him. The second young master's appearance was outstanding. However, for the sake of fairness, his personality was not very likable. Furthermore, after killing Zhao Nua, Xiao Zhu's reputation as jade-faced military governor, young killer, spread. Others did not dare to look up to him. Of course, Zhao Tong added fuel to the fire. However, Xiao Zhu himself also left behind many rumors. For example, when his parents were buried, he did not shed a single tear. He was busy fighting for military power in the throne room. He did not even spend the 7th day of the funeral, leaving eldest young master Xiao to clean up the mess by himself. Every time the relatives gathered together during festivals, he did not like to talk to them. He only hurriedly left after meeting them. Cheng Lisu still remembered that it was a summer day. Eldest aunt Bai Rongwei was hosting the relatives of the Cheng family. The Xiao family did not have many people nowadays. It was rare for it to be so lively. Cheng Li Su also went. At that time, Xiao Ju had already been bestowed the title of General Fengyan. He had just turned 18 and returned to Shuajing. The women were all eating snacks and drinking tea in the main room. The men were discussing politics with Xiao Jing. Cheng Li Su looked around and did not see Xiao Ju. He was very naughty when he was young. Everyone around his age did not like to play with him. Cheng Li Su looked for fun. He ran to the Xiao family's backyard and saw a cat with a colorful face. He chased after the cat and ran behind a screen inside the ancestral hall. It was summer and the weather changed quickly. In the evening, there were already dark clouds above the city walls. Thunder rumbled and suddenly, heavy rain poured down. He held the cat in his arms and wanted to go out. Suddenly he heard footsteps. Someone came in. Cheng Li Su secretly poked his head out from behind the screen and saw his mysterious uncle walk in. The young man was wearing a round satin robe with a golden crown on his head. He had a graceful appearance and was like a glittering jewel. When he was young, he liked to wear white robes. Now that he was older, he only liked to wear dark clothes. It made him seem even colder and harder to understand. Xiao Ju walked into the ancestral hall. He picked up 3 incense sticks and lit them. Cheng Li Su's eyes widened. There were all kinds of rumors about Xiao Ju. Cheng Li Su heard that Xiao Ju never lit incense for his parents. He was a heartless person. But now, it seemed that the rumors were not completely true. He moved slowly but carefully. First, he dusted the incense burner and wiped it clean with a cloth. Then he lit the incense sticks and inserted them into the burner. Niao niao smoke rose from the burner and dispersed in the air. He did not leave. He did not say anything. He just stood there with his eyes lowered. No one knew what he was thinking. The summer weather was hot and humid. Water vapor came in from the outside. It was sticky and the thunder was louder. The young man narrowed his eyes. His expression was calm. The rain outside washed the eaves, but inside the house, it was unbelievably quiet. Cheng Li didn't understand what was going on, but he felt that the atmosphere was strange. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He hugged the cat and sat behind the screen with his cold uncle for more than an hour. After a long time, the rain stopped. Xiao Ju left the ancestral hall. From the time he entered the ancestral hall to the time he left, he only lit 3 incense sticks. He did not say anything and did nothing. He just sat there quietly. But these 3 incense sticks made Cheng Li Su feel that under his uncle's cold appearance, there was a different gentleness. He was not the heartless person that others said he was. There were many people in the world who hid their true feelings under their cold appearance. It was not that there were no such people, but they were not good at expressing themselves. Others always said that Cheng Li Su was still like a child, naive and ignorant. However, in the eyes of a child, he was able to distinguish between good and evil. He did not think that this uncle of his was as mean as his mother said. He liked this uncle more than eldest young Master Xiao. My uncle is very powerful. Cheng Li Su looked seriously into her eyes and said, if you stay with him for a long time, you will also like him. Yan laughed and couldn't help but rub his head. I know. I knew it a long time ago. Thousands of miles away in Shuajing, the spring river was also full of sparks. The water lanterns reflected on the water and under the water. It was impossible to tell the difference between heaven and earth. Today it was drizzling. Above the water lanterns, there was a small paper cover to prevent them from being extinguished by the rain. In the ancestral hall of the Xiaofu, someone was burning incense. Ever since Xiao Zhongwu and his wife had passed away, the number of servants in the general's fu had decreased greatly. There were only 2 young masters, and Xiao Ju was often away from the fu. In the end, it was only Xiao Jing and his wife who did not need so many servants. Normally, it was quiet, but when he looked at it occasionally, it was a little cold and cheerless. Xiao Jing wore a jade-colored robe. He was as tall and warm as bamboo. When he stood next to Bai Rongwei beside him, anyone would praise them as an immortal couple. Niao niao, the autumn rain continued outside. A cool wind blew. He took off his cloak and covered Bai Rongwei with it. In a warm voice he said, the weather is cold. Be careful not to catch a cold. I'm not cold. Bai Rongwei smiled at him and said worriedly, I wonder what the weather is like in Liangzhou. Tonight is the Hungry Ghost Festival. Xiao Jing looked at the drizzle in the courtyard and said, if Huijin was here it would be good. He won't come to the ancestral hall. Bai Rongwei shook her head. He won't enter the ancestral hall. He will enter. Xiao Jing's answer was very certain. Bai Rongwei looked at him with surprise. But I've never seen him before. It's raining today and there's thunder. Xiao Jing smiled. He will enter. Ruby, I don't understand. Bai Rongwei did not understand. When Huijin was very young he was brought to the mountains by his father, and was taught by an expert. Xiao Jing held her hand and said softly, throughout the year, we only see him a few times. He has a proud personality. Mother does not like him to play with knives and sticks. In reality, the relationship between Huijin and mother has never been good. Madame Xiao was the Empress Dowager's niece. That year, it was the Empress Dowager who had bestowed this marriage. Xiao Zhongwu was handsome and powerful, and Madame Xiao liked him very much. But after the marriage, the conflict between the two gradually came to light. Madame Xiao was a delicate flower that grew up in the house. She could not bear the slightest grievance. Xiao Zhongwu was after all a military officer. He was not as attentive as the son of an aristocratic family. Although he had never taken a wife, sometimes it made Madame Xiao unhappy. During the years when the two of them quarreled most fiercely, it was because of Xiao Ju. Madame Xiao did not want her two sons to become martial artists. Swords and arrows had no eyes on the battlefield. She herself did not like killing and was a gentle and kind Buddhist. At that time, Xiao Jing missed the best opportunity to practice martial arts because of his health. He had no other choice. Xiao Ju, on the other hand, had been regarded as the future successor by Xiao Zhongwu since young. Madame Xiao did not want her son to follow in Xiao Zhongwu's footsteps. But for the first time, Xiao Zhongwu, who had always been obedient to Madame Xiao, did not listen to his wife's advice. The son had been separated from his mother for too long. Although they were related by blood, they were still unfamiliar with each other. Moreover, Xiao Ju was not as obedient and gentle as Xiao Jing when she was young. Sometimes, she would even show a rebellious side. Facing this cold and arrogant son, Madame Xiao did not know how to get along with him. Madame Xiao tried to be friendly with Xiao Ju, but Xiao Ju's reaction was also indifferent. Madame Xiao liked to drink tea and discuss poetry, but Xiao Ju liked to practice swordsmanship and ride horses. Although Xiao Ju was also good at poetry, the one who accompanied Madame Xiao in the end was Xiao Jing. My mother told me in private that she was actually a little afraid of Huijin. Xiao Jing said, seemingly amused. After that, she did not deliberately talk to Huijin. The two of them were always very polite to each other. Huijin was actually very pitiful. Xiao Jing's smile became sad. My father was cold and hard. He did not tolerate Huijin at all. I only found out later that he suffered a lot on the mountain. If he did not tell us, we all thought that he was living a good life. If it were me, I probably would not have been able to hold on for long. He laughed self-deprecatingly. Byron patted his hand comfortingly. Nonsense. You can do well too. Xiao Jing recalled the year when Xiao Ju came down from the mountain. He asked his younger brother, how was it on the mountain? The youth stretched lazily and smiled lightly. Not bad. The three words not bad hid all the hardships he had suffered. All that was left was a high-spirited second young master Xiao. Others say that a strict father and a loving mother. My father was strict with him, but my mother was not always by his side. When she finally came back, she was overly polite because she was afraid of him. My mother thought that he liked sweets, so she often made osmanthus sweets for him. Huijin would always eat it clean. Even I was fooled. Later, his close followers said that Huijin did not eat sweets. Because this was the only way my mother could express her love for him, he ate it. Even if he did not like it, even if no one asked him what he liked to eat. Byron sighed slightly and did not say anything. Although I was his elder brother, I did not seem to have helped him much. Others always said that he was heartless, and that he was not as good as me. However, they do not know that the reason why I can be the honorable eldest young master Xiao today is because he bore a lot of burden for me. I know this and he knows it too. He smiled bitterly. Now, I regret that my father did not let me join the military. If I did not become a civil official, perhaps I would be the one to bear the burden of the Xiao family today. Huaijin does not need to be misunderstood by others. We all know that Huaijin is doing this for you. Bai Rong said softly. Father and mother will know too. Xiao Jing looked at the memorial tablet in the ancestral hall. He said, when Huaijin was young, he was not close to mother. He would go out every 2 or 3 days. In fact, he cared about mother. My mother was timid and easily frightened. She was most afraid of thunder. Every time there was thunder, if Huaijin was at home, he would find an excuse to go to mother's room to sit. Every time mother saw Huaijin, she would think about how to get along with Huaijin and forget about the thunder. When the rain stopped, Huaijin would leave. At first, I did not understand. One time there was thunder and rain. I was outside with him, but he suddenly said that he had something important to do and had to return home. When he returned home, he said that he wanted to eat osmanthus candy. Mother was busy cooking for him. I suddenly understood that Huaijin was just afraid that mother would be frightened by the thunder, so he deliberately found an excuse to come back. Bai Rong heard this and also laughed. She shook her head and said, Huaijin is really. Unfortunately, mother did not know Huaijin's feelings for her until she died, Xiao Jing said bitterly. If she had known, perhaps she would not have ended up like this today. Bai Rongwei held his hand tightly. Mother's spirit in heaven will understand. He accompanied mother when she was alive and after she died. As long as he was at home, whenever there was thunder and rain, he would come to the ancestral hall to accompany mother. Xiao Jing smiled slightly. This is a secret. I did not tell anyone. I think that Huaijin also did not want anyone to know. Xiao Ju was too proud. He did these things like the spring rain, silently moistening things. He did not ask for any results. But in the end, if one thought about it seriously, he felt that he was the one who was owed the most. So you said that if he was in Shuajing today, he would also come to the ancestral hall to accompany mother. Bai Rongwei understood. He is that kind of person. Xiao Jing smiled. The smoke in the incense burner floated into the air and slowly dissipated without a trace. The people of the past had become the past. The unspoken care and companionship would no longer have a chance to be explained. Ruby, you have to know. Bai Rongwei pulled Xiao Jing's hand and said gently, Huaijin did these things to protect Xiao family. Right now, Huaijin is far away in Liangzhou. Prime Minister Su's faction still sees Xiao family as a thorn in their side. You have to be more alert and not let Huaijin's efforts go to waste. Xiao Jing stilled slightly and then smiled. He said, Of course I know. I know that you care about Huaijin. Bai Rongwei's voice softened. But I also care about you. Huaijin has taken on many responsibilities, but are you not the same? Prime Minister Su is secretly suppressing Xiao family and finding fault with you. You are careful at every step in court. How can you be relaxed? You don't have to worry. Xiao Jing smiled. The most difficult time has passed. Bai Rong stilled for a moment and then smiled. You are right. The rain did not stop. The courtyard in Shuajing was soaked. Thousands of li away in Liangzhou, there was someone leaning on the window in a daze. His fine black hair fell on his shoulders, smooth and cold like silk. His expression was indifferent. The sound of a flute came from the distance. Someone was playing a tune from his hometown. As he listened, he softly smiled. This smile contained a bit of self-mockery and loneliness. After a moment, he closed the window and isolated the night outside. The light in the room flickered slowly, reflecting his starry eyes. On the table was a long wooden tray. Scattered rice grains were piled on the tray. The rice grains were different and small flags made of red cloth were inserted. Shen Han, Liang Ping, and the other instructors were all in the room. They surrounded the table and stared at Xiao Ju's movements. Governor, these are the places to put the flags? Isn't there too many? Not too many. The youth's figure was like jade. He held a chess piece and pointed at the red flag at the top. In 7 days, the flag battle will take place on Mount Baiyue. that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.